Hello and welcome back to Racing on Zwift. This is week 3 of season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. I'm Matt Stevens, and alongside me for the virtual ride today, as ever, is Hannah Walker, who is again in Belgium. Hey Hannah, I think we'll get that sound sorted out in a few moments' time. And sorry, Hannah, good to have you back with us. I know you're in Belgium. Perhaps we've got problems with the sound over there, but great to have you with us, Hannah. We'll be talking to you later in the women's race, of course, and alongside me for the men's race today, as ever, the legend that is Mr. Dave Towle.
Thank you, Matt. Always good to be with you and Hannah. Really excited for today.
Now, before we take a look at what's happening in week 3, I do have formal message to read from Zwift in relation to the last couple of rounds of the Zwift Racing League. Heading into round 3 of the Zwift Racing League, we've already seen some absolutely fantastic action unfold over the first 2 races. Now, while the racing has been great to watch, the Premier Division races have not been without issue. Now, Zwift received reports of a bug in rounds 1 and 2 of the ZRL Premier Division that caused the game to crash for some riders. The bug also meant that Zwift's game servers received incomplete results from both rounds. Now, enough data was received from the races in round 1 to provide accurate results and determine the league standings. However, this has not sadly proven to be the case for round 2. Now, Zwift servers have not received enough information to accurately determine results for all riders for round 2 of the Premier Division points race. Now, in fairness to all riders and teams, Zwift have taken the very difficult decision to void all results from round 2. This has not been an easy decision to make, and we have to extend our thanks to the teams for providing video and logs of the crashes, which has meant that the product and engineering teams in Zwift could react with the highest priority to identify the issue which caused the crashes. Over the last week, the issue has been identified and a fix is in place for future events. The integrity of the races and support of the teams is of paramount importance to Zwift. We would like to extend an apology to all those teams taking part in the Premier Division and to all of the fans watching from home. So, apologies from Zwift there for the first difficult couple of the next few weeks. It's going to be special racing. And today, Dave, we've got a very, very challenging course on the menu. Before we look at the teams, talk us through what's on the menu, because this is going to be a humdinger of a race tonight.
Great word. There ain't no party like a New York party, and this is the after party, Matt. So 3 laps out there on what is known as Gotham Grind Reverse before they head over to the forward KOM, but these 3 laps will be bedlam. We've got sprints to look forward to. They score 10 deep. They'll be massively important in the ultimate outcome of the race today. This is the figure 8 circuits that they're doing on a course that is anything but flat. It's noteworthy that 3/4 of the climbing that you're going to do throughout this 37 kilometers of racing happens on these circuits. So the notable feature there would be certainly Cat's Paw, but that hill shouldn't be enough to do damage to a peloton as strong as what we have here. So as they head out on that final circuit, the last points will be scored at our bonuses, and we'll be on to the forward KOM. And this is where one rider will make their mark in ZRL history today, Matt. It's going to be fantastic racing.
It is a great course. NYC always provides difficult racing terrain, attritional racing. And Dave, we know it's going to be even more attritional because of the amount of points on offer out on the road. There's been a real shift in the emphasis, hasn't there, for these points races in relation to intermediate sprint points. So talk us through exactly how many points are going to be out on the route on offer for those teams to battle for tonight. Because let's face it, it's a scratch race, but more importantly, it's a team race. And the simple rules is you need to accumulate as many wins.
Yeah, it's interesting, Matt. I mean, the most that one rider could earn would be 80 points out here, and that would be winning all 3 bonus sprints. I mean, I guess it's not impossible that could be done, and then you would be a one-man team. But in this case, you're right. It's going to be the depth that comes into play. You're going to need to have really all 5 riders participating. Everybody should have an opportunity to come to the fore out here today, whether it's going for those bonus points. But, Matt, really what's noteworthy is the shift in how we're rewarding the podium. 50 points for the winner, 40 for second, and 35 for third. It does bunch up then as you work down to the top 30 riders on the day. But we massively reward, as we should, the riders that stand out here. Who is it going to be? Well, we'll have that answered for you about an hour from now. But we get ready to light the fuse on what should become an instant classic out here, Matt. I'm going to say that if you enjoyed the Libby Hill after party when we raced in Richmond in season 2, you're going to really love the racing out here today. If you're only going to watch one day of esports racing in your life, watch today.
Yeah, please make sure you stick with us today, both men's and women's races. It is a wonderful course with a proper hilltop finish. The KOM forward, 1.36 Ks at 6.4%. That's a real sting in the tail today. But Dave, of utmost importance today, as ever in Zwift, is strategy. Talk about the 3 power-ups we've got on offer today.
You bet, Matt. So draft, arrow, and feather. Obviously, the feather is going to be the one that everyone wants in their quiver. See what I did there? That's going to be a critical, taking 10% off of your weight for 15 seconds. That could be the difference between winning and falling outside of the top 10, to tell you the truth. Arrow is 25% reduced from your drag coefficient. That's also for 15 seconds. And then draft, which is a 50% increase in the draft that you're receiving. but that doubles. It's 30 seconds. So the riders will be picking up their first power up at that first sprint out there. And again, completely randomized. You don't know which one of the three you're going to get.
Great stuff. Well, let's have a little look at the 20 teams that we're going to see racing tonight in the men's field. I'm going to reintroduce a couple of the new teams. We've got a wildcard team for season 3. Straight in the centre, next to Legion of Los Angeles, is a jersey many of you will recognise from racing in real life. Movistar E-Team, of course, part and parcel of the World Tour squad as well. Great to see them here. They have a very, very good squad indeed. And the other 3 newly promoted teams, top left, that's Beast Mode powered by Rose, a German squad. They know what they're doing. They are an exceptionally strong team. Also, watch out for Next Esports. They're on the right-hand side in that lovely green, faded green, black and blue faded kit. And finally, BZR Sports Solid, top of the screen in that Belgian-looking kit, that black and blue kit. Now, as well as the newly promoted squad from the Community Division, Dave, who are we going to keep our eye out for tonight? Who have you got in mind for tonight's course?
First stop, Canyon. There's no way you can look past this team. Lionel Viasen is the most consistent and high-quality rider that we've ever seen in the ZRL, and I cannot imagine a scenario where he's not part of the conversation. The team does not have a weak link to tell the truth. South Africa, right in the middle of your screen, is a powerhouse. Adding Antoine, certainly is brings a nice rounding out of the squad, because we know Ollie Jones is a closer. And the American Spencer Segerbrook is really up game. Young man is way above his weight. So you would be amazed out of your top 3 teams for sure. But POR is another squad that is nothing but quality. You've got 2 riders here on the podium at the World Championships. A silver and a bronze medal went to Denmark, and now you can see this entirely Danish team also has the Swiss Army knife of esports racing. And the virtual Everest world record holder, this former police officer, is also got a wicked sprint. I'm talking about Michael Knudsen, who might be winning his first ever ZRL race today. And you never want to leave out Joaquim or Emil as well. This team has extreme talent. Now, Saris the Pros Closet, Gavin Dempster, the Scottish rider, he's not a wild card. He's a straight up favorite out here today. And he has riders on his team that will all be there. Matt, the difference between Saris the Pros Closet and the other teams out here is these guys have incredible depth. There, again, isn't a rider on this team that I would bet against being in that final group on the climb. So here we go. We are locked and loaded. This is not a drill. Big bike race back in New York.
Indeed. Well, thank you for that really detailed insight, Dave, into the squad state, or a few of the squads to watch out for today. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see this one unfold as we look at Dan Fleeman, one of the members of Saracen the Pros Closet. He's the type of rider, I think, Dave, that will really like that kick up to the line. You know, he's an ex-pro rider, ridden at World Tour level himself, so watch out for Fleeman in that finale. But Dave, just before the race really starts to unfold on this undulating circuit that really breaks the rhythm, tactics today, we talked about the power-up tactics side of things, that these riders are going to really know when to use those. But in terms of the importance of the director sportif and the road captain today, actually distributing evenly and precisely the resource that you have at your disposal is going to be crucial. So the teams with the most strength in depth and versatility are going to profit tonight, but they've really got to think about how they use their troops tonight, haven't they?
Yeah, you would think, Matt, that if there was ever a day of racing that we've had in the ZRL where riders will have pre-assigned roles for the day, I'm going to think that these teams try to stick to the script out here, at least for the first lap. So that director sportif, that really is the 6th rider on the team out here today. And trying to set up, I mean, this first sprint where you're going to receive your first power up here today as well, comes up just after 7K of racing. And this is going to tell us a lot. Now, if, you remember back to season 2 when we saw Freddie Ovid, the Australian, go on an incredible run. He's on the Legion of LA team. Now, Freddie could absolutely win out here today, and he's one of the riders that you don't put a limit on him. He could pick up some bonus sprints sit back a little bit and then show up for the finale as well. I shouldn't call it a finale. It'll be a grand finale on the Forward KOM. I love this New York world, Matt. I hadn't been to Central Park until well into my adulthood, but I always pictured it as being completely flat. I don't know if it's the movies I watched or why it was that I saw it that way, but this course is nothing but you're going up, you're going down, or you're turning out here. You really don't get much reprieve at all.
You need to keep your eyes open, you need to stay focused, and you need to make sure you can get as much rest as you can. I mean, because the road kicks up, it also drops down again. There are opportunities for little micro rests as we look at the stats of Christoph Thiem from one of the newly promoted teams from the community division. Let's have a look at his stats. Just sat at or near the head of affairs there, just on the right hand side there, the German rider from this new squad. The Beast Mode really know what they're doing. They've really dominated the community divisions, and they've obviously got a men's and a women's team, but they're run, aren't they, by the coach of the current esports world champion. So that indicates how serious this team is.
Yeah, they're not messing around. I would have to say, Matt, that applies to all three of the community teams that were promoted up into. So at the end of season 2, we bring 3 teams up, and then unfortunately 3 teams are demoted as well. You have to make room. Well, the teams that we brought up are of a very high quality. They'll have an immediate impact out here. So we're taking a look at Zach Nair from the next team. This is another one of the Americans. Zach actually is a tremendous journalist, does a really good job of breaking down esports. Not many guys can race it like they write it, but Zach can. And this next team is a perfect example of what we were talking about. Ashton Lambie, last week, we were talking about him. The teams have the ability to change up their roster depending on the course, as we've said. There's horses for courses. And certainly today, it's interesting because, as we said at the top of the show, everyone has an opportunity out here. But for the first 3 laps, it's your sprinters that come into play, Matt. I'm interested to see what Zach Nair is going to do out here. I have a feeling he's saving himself for the last 5K.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, just again, a rider that these new community teams over the next few weeks, of course, there's 8 rounds. We'll get to know these riders just a little bit more, see their kind of strengths and their weaknesses, their characteristics, as we look at another new rider from Team BZR. That's a nice bold jersey, isn't it? There inside his pain cave. Looks like that's his garage. Matthias de Roos out of the saddle on one of these small undulating sections. 6 watts a kilo, making it look pretty casual at the moment there. 80 RPM as he sits back down in the saddle. But BPM of 173 would indicate he's not too far away from riding at his threshold, kind of borderline TT pace at the moment, Dave. But again, it's wonderful to see these picture-in-pictures because all of you watching, the vast majority of you will know, of course, what it's like to generate this sort of power riding on Zwift, but these elite level Zwifters really make it look so easy. The quality over the last couple of seasons, Dave, has just got better and better as we look at the Ride-On League. Lionel Vujasan, we know how popular Lionel Vujasan is riding for Canyon Esports, 69.70 now, but make sure you do get on your Zwift companion apps and give your favourite riders, all the riders that you think deserve it the most, a nice little ride on just to give them a boost. But 4.2Ks already under the wheels, Dave, and as you said, the first intermediate sprint comes at about 7.3, I think it is. Here's the stats of Vidar Mel. This is one of the big transfers of season 2 to season 3, wasn't it, Dave?
Absolutely, Matt. So for that reason, in an interesting way, about, I'm going to say it was 2 months ago that they started the process of the Movistar Academy. And the riders that they get come out of teams that were, most of them, I believe 4 of the 5 riders were already major talents in the ZRL. So they jump into this league as an immediate threat, no doubt about it. And Vidar Mel is certainly a rider with the qualities of a champion, no doubt. Taking a look at the front of the group here, his Callis team is rushing the front as Eric Zlat is moved to the front. I see Lionel Audit as well, World Elite Zwifters rider riding. So these guys are starting to set up already for this first sprint. They know how important, everyone is aware, Matt, how important these bonus points are going to be. And for the guys that don't expect to be there, well, some riders can plan on being both involved in these sprints and in the finale. There's other riders that are designated role players out here, Matt, and they are here to gobble up as many points as they can. And to tell you the truth, if they fall outside of the top 10, they're going to be a little bit disappointed. There's a good line to look at. Ed Veal up out of Canada. He's going to be absolutely opening up the throttle. Go ahead and put it down on the floorboard right now. These guys are absolutely flying. Look at the spearhead on the front of this group. Very, very aggressive, as we're now just a little over 1K from scoring our first points out here today. Matt, as you mentioned, this is much more than just a point-to-point bike race. It really adds all of the great elements of racing in with the ZRL, and these points will matter when it's done and dusted.
Okay, let's have a look at Gleason here from No Pins. It's only, as Dave said, just over a kilometre to go to the first intermediate sprint. We're seeing the pace starting to increase now. They're rolling it along at well over 40 k's an hour at the moment, 6.2 k's underneath our virtual wheels right now, and we have exactly 1 kilometre to go until we reach the first intermediate sprint. It's actually on a slight rise as well, and then actually kicks up just after, so it could be not just a springboard to score points, but we'll see if that provides the catalyst, Dave, for actually breakaways to go, because that's something that you can't rule out in a race like this. We don't think on a course like this it's just going to be teams going for the sprints. We could see that provide a bit of a springboard for some more aggressive racing as Ottoma now moves to the front for Dutch Racing.
I would absolutely echo what you're talking about, and the danger point, Matt, comes right after the sprint, so pay close attention here. For the riders that sit up, there's a really nice prime counterattack opportunity, as it is a slightly uphill sprint, and it continues that slight uphill well past that sprint line. So we'll keep our eyes peeled watching for that. Now, it's not going to be about riders getting dropped. This is such a high level, and the difference in talent and ability is minuscule. It's going to come down to heart and tactics out here today, and certainly it's going to be interesting, because here we go. Let her rip, and it looks like Gary Mueller out of South Africa, Matt.
It is Mueller. Well, he's really stolen a bit of a march here. Kemper is coming up for Dutch Racing as well. Looks like he's going to be rolled on. That was a long sprint from Mueller. Mueller and Kemper from Rijkaard, Mel and Van Ruth at the moment. But the sprint, where is the finish line? Well, absolutely fantastic long ranger there, and they're keeping on going. Remember, this is a slight uphill sprint to the line. Rijkaard now from the Kirkmare E-Racing team. Looks like, I think it was Gumbel that just took him on the line. We'll pick the bones out of that one in a minute, but a very interesting long range sprint there. I mean, that's this sprint is a long one. It's uphill and it goes on for 400 metres, Dave. That's an absolute brute to start things off. Will we see a launch go over the top? It looks like we've got Tony Gumbel there. Let's have a look at the confirmation. It was Gumbel that took maximum points there. Rijkaard, Voldego, Gould, Vujasan, Mel, Kirkmare, Zvan, Turksma, and then Van Noppen rounding out the top 10. Well, that was some sprint there, but interesting how early, Dave, Camden opened it up there, wasn't it?
Boy, that is rough, too, sprinting this early into a race, an important sprint at that. That's a who's who. If you look at it, I mean, Ingo Rijkaard, the German on Kirkmaier, he could win this race. We already, at the opening of the show, talked about Anders Voldogger there, the Danish rider. Look at Lionel Vujasan. He's contesting. So Vujasan must have great legs out here today if he's going to opt in, because I'm expecting him. He's one of the 5 riders that I can easily imagine taking the win out here today. It's going to be a rugged race. As you notice now, we're out here on lap number 1 of 3. This is the infamous Gotham Grind reverse course. Let's take a look at a replay of that sprint, Matt.
Yeah, let's have a look at that in slow motion. You can just see it was a very late lunge by Gumbel. Rijkaard was leading pretty much all the way to the line, but it was the man in the white jersey there that just took him on the line. Gumbel there from Rijkaard from the Kirkmare team. We're really proving strong. Just look at how many power-ups were used on that section as well. Lots of riders dropping that draft just to give them that extra bit of assistance. And also, interestingly, Dave, after the sprint, there were a lot of riders that were deploying their draft power-ups just to give them a bit of a rest, because the pace on that drag to the line would put a lot of riders in difficulty. And let's have a look at the current score out on the road. Well, there we go. Kirkmare with 13. Good start by them, but a very solid start indeed by Movistar E-Team, nailing their colours to the mast with 12. Ensured, powered by Pedal Power there in third. And then we have Pio Auto in fourth, Canyon Esports fifth, Dutch Racing sixth. So good start by Kirkmare, and in particular that the new wildcard team, Movistar.
Yeah, so nice distribution of those points. It looks like all the heavy hitters have decided that they aren't going to wait until the finale and try to stack points at the end, but it's going to be grab them where you can out here today. There's so much parity, Matt, at this point in the ZRL. We've never had a better group of teams racing against each other, making every point that much more valuable, because it's not like you're racing against two other really strong teams at this point. There is no weak link out here. There's the man who picked up the maximum bonification at sprint number one, Tony Gumbel, the American here.
Yeah, good to see Gumbel there. He's got a very posh paint cave. That doesn't look like that's in the garage or the shed. It looks like it's quite a well-appointed room in the house there. But no, that was a very, very well-timed sprint indeed. 8 power-ups for him, and that's the draft saving for Gumbel on the right-hand side there. Now, draft saving, for anybody who is unfamiliar with that, it's basically the amount of draft he's actually saving by riding in the position that he is. As he's near the front of the bunch there, he won't be saving very much at all, should I say. But the further he drifts back into the main pack, into the main peloton, that is where, very much like in real life, you'll get that benefit of riding within that kind of dirty air, within that kind of vortex. And the best place to ride within the bunch within Zwift is actually towards the back and in the middle, and you can save several hundred watts, of course, depending on the speed, the pace that the bunch are moving. But conserving energy, so important, and there's some riders that are very, very good at almost surfing the wheels, Dave, on Zwift here.
Yeah, that's the name of the game, is you don't want to light that fuse until you absolutely have to. So using a similar analogy here, keeping as much powder dry as you can. And that's going to be the name of the game. The next sprint comes up more or less there or thereabouts at 17K in. So we've got a ways till we get there. Matt, I think the reality of how hard it will be to break away, especially on this part of the circuit, you're not going to see anybody attacking off of the front. So as you said, just trying to stay in the sweet spot is the name of the game out here. As we get a look, I love our efficiency rating. This is basically speed and watts per kilo, looking at that ratio. And you get a good look for the riders that are doing a good job at what you were just talking about, Matt. If you're in that top 10, you're doing a really nice job of racing your bike. Indeed.
It's about moving at the fastest speed for the least amount of energy. So basically putting the least amount of power through the pedals and drifting through the bunch. And like in racing in real life, I keep using the in real life comparisons because it is important. That's how you kind of understand, but you need to ride as efficiently as you can. And quite often you'll get riders who win these races on Zwift who perform very, very well. And Dave, they've actually put out the least, the least amount of power. So their watts per kilo, not their watts per kilo, but their average power for the duration of the race. Quite often you see riders with the least amount of power that they put out performing the best. They've obviously used the power that they have at their disposal at the most precise, opportune moments. And that's a real craft. That's a skill, isn't it?
It certainly is. So, Matt, I think it's noteworthy here. This is not an exercise contest. This is a bicycle race. And oftentimes, Cavendish taking his 150th win. Well, a big part of his success has been able to do as little work as possible and making it into the finale of the race to uncork. Well, look at this scenario that we're looking at now, Matt. It is starting to split up. So, and that's the man we were talking about, Leonard.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry to cut across you there, Dave. Yeah, the man that you tipped at the top of the show. Tugel's now off the front there. Looking very, very good indeed for BZR Sports
this
Solid.
Is an attack.
Didn't expect. Yeah, this is a really, really good move. They've actually pulled clear Hewell Davis of the BRT Mountain Fuel team, and also there along for the ride is none other than Freddie Ovett, the man that took 3 individual points race victories in season 2. There, back to heel, but a little group of 5 or 6 riders just drifting off the front here. This could be dangerous and just shows it's not just these intermediate sprint points that we're going to have some action. This group has got a little lead, but I think the peloton have thought that's a bit too dangerous, and it looks as if it has actually come back together. It's Ollie Jones now for Canyon Esports trying to chase this little group down, and they've opened up a gap of just a couple of seconds. So Ollie Jones is in that front group, can I say?
Absolute Donnybrook going on out here right now. Fantastic racing. We expected that this would be an instant classic, and here we go. Now, they're quite a ways, or I shouldn't say quite a ways, but a few kilometers. Now, Leonard Tugel's racing in Zwift Community Live's event in the community was phenomenal. He had a solo breakaway early in season, really able to ECR Sports Solo, and gave them tremendous momentum through that season too. But you can see that they are not going to give any leash at all. So this is the Norwegian. But I think teams now that are looking to pick up the next set of points, and we've got 10 deep being scored at the sprint, just a few K away. I don't think we've seen this kind of animation ever before.
One of those circuits that ebbs and flows, rises and falls, and if you're feeling good on a descent, you get into that aero super tuck, carry a lot of speed, and if you hit the accelerator pedal, i.e. the crank arm, just at the right time, you can really propel yourself off the front. There are lots of points on this race where you can really use what I like to call that kind of sling application power at just the right moments, but there are points on this circuit that do lend themselves towards that sort of attack if you're feeling good, especially if you combine it with the wise use of a power. The next intermediate sprint comes at 16.6, so we've only got 1,500 meters to go, and the Norwegian Island is going again. He's keen, isn't he?
Relentless out here. That's going to be the story of the day, and he throws up a feather, so that again is 10% off of his weight, using it and really getting rid of it, to tell you the truth, because they will reload their power-ups now. So it wasn't really that effective for him, but at this point now we have gone into a new mode as we have now prepared for our second sprint. Can the Norwegian lick his plate clean for 10 points? Let's see. This looks like a great job by a role player out here right now, Matt. Can he hold on to pick up these points? He's got just about a K to go.
Yeah, it's a hard one. The bunch is closing. I saw one of his teammates just on the front then, just trying to almost do a little bit of blocking, rolling to the front and then freewheeling to almost kind of just disrupt the momentum that the bunch have got. But the gap now is down to 1.1 seconds. He's holding 4 watts a kilo, and it does look on this slight little downhill section before the road kicks up again that he is going to be brought back to heel. He's now being reabsorbed by the bunch, but a good little attack there by Erik Gisland from Callas Esports Racing Team. Van Elst is up there, Steinman, Levinson, Ollie Jones not too far from the head of affairs as well. You can just see him highlighted at the moment. Around a kilometre to go towards this next sprint. They know what's coming, and this is a particularly tough one. Long sprint.
And now, I thought going to start stacking the top 10, but you can see how quickly they're turning the tables out here. Here comes Nicholas Pedersen. That is going to be a very interesting top 10 that we're looking at, but Spencer Segabrooke, the American, has hit out with authority here in New York City's Central Park, and I think that Spencer should have done enough to pick up the points. We will see. Pedersen is gone. That comes so hard. The Gladiators of Zwift. That's going to be Brian Hodges to the front now.
Aikida as well is up there. Aikida, Hodges, Simon, Vujasan, Mel. Wow, they were bunched across the line there. The first time we've seen the Japanese rider. We saw him pack a real solid punch last season. Let's just see what the confirmation is there. Vidar Mel takes the win ahead of Hodges. Foldager is there as well. Simon, Leeson, Vujasan scoring more points. Ranker, Ollie Jones as well there for Canyon Esports. Then we have Pedersen and Veal rounding out the top 10. the top 10, should I say. So Vidar Mel is riding very good. That's another maximum point score for Movistar, signing that team. And remember, leading the ranking so far, and it's certainly going to put them in a good position as we head towards the back end of the race. Dave, I believe we're going to head to a replay, pick the bones out of this one, because this sprint, it's a really difficult one to time right, isn't it?
Boy, Movistar just not missing a step in their premier season in the Premier League, but you can see the Norwegian times this one perfectly. I thought the American Brian Hodges of Insured Pedal Power was going to pick that up, but it shows you how they are really fighting tooth and nail for every point out here. And Matt, again, just to set the table for everyone, these points will matter, as now we've gone through our second sprint. They're scored 10 deep, and we're going to be able to take a look at how the teams then have been able to combine all of their riders' points. Each team starts with 5 riders. Now, these points, there's a lot waiting at the finish line, but these will be massively important. The German theme right now, having a strong day. The Swiss rider, Nicky Hug, as well. Right after the sprint, very dangerous moment for a breakaway to go clear. Could it happen now?
Well, there's a couple of riders just trying to go. It is Nicky Hug. We know how strong the Swiss rider is, as you said, riding now for BRT Mountain Fuel. Zach Harner, the American, for no pins, trying to get across the gap. And the ever-present Freddie Ovett also there as well, making sure not a bit. Well, that current situation at the top. So out on the road, this just shows how many points there are available. PO Auto Ceramic Speed now lead with 24. Movistar there, 2 points adrift with 22. Insured, powered by Pedal Power there with 19. Canyon Esports move up with 4th. Kirkmare still there with 13. Then we have No Pins, Dutch Racing, Beast Mode, and then Draft. So interestingly, a couple of teams that have missed out aren't really scoring, or that might be part of their plan. Saris and the Pros Closet, I'm surprised, unless they're looking at scoring big points later on and saving themselves. And also Legion of Los Angeles, but again, we've seen this before. There could be all eggs in one basket for the back end of the race. Really interesting.
You never really do know with the teams strategy they've come into the race with. But one thing's for sure, just like the great comes into the ring with a plan, but it changes when you get punched in the face. And that certainly is what's happening out here for some of these teams. If you were planning on sprinting for bonus points and you've been getting shut out of the top 10, well, you're certainly going to be readjusting things now, and this is where you might want to try to put some kind of breakaway in play, but your riders have to have the legs. This is a Machiavellian chess match on wheels, and you can sometimes have a director that has big ambition, but the riders have to be able to back that up with their legs and lungs. And believe me, everybody right now has been pushing incredibly hard. As we're coming up on the midpoint of this race, we do have another sprint to score here in New York City before we begin that journey off of the 3 circuits and start our way onto the forward KOM. So typically, Matt, like if you looked at it like Innsbruck, that climb, the KOM, made up more than half of the climbing that you saw in the entire race. Even more than that, more like 2/3 of the climbing that you saw in the entire race. And that's including the leg snapper. Here, well, 3/4 of the climbing will be done on these circuits.
Yeah. That's because it's up, like you said, it's up and down all the way. They're on a fast section here, as you can see, before the road picks up. But they're only short. They're only a few hundred meters long. I think the longest one of these drags is only 400 or 500 meters, if that. But the climbing towards the back end, once they've passed through the final intermediate sprint point, which comes at around 25.8 kilometers, we've then got a couple of climbs to tackle, Dave, before the KOM forward. We have Harlem Hill and the Sky Road. So we've got Harlem Hill. It then drops down. Then we hit the glass and head onto the Sky Road. And that's just the beginning. It drops down again before we tackle the KOM forward. So the precursor to the final climb to the line is really going to soften things up, Dave, isn't it? And the final climb itself, the KOM forward, 1.36 kilometers at an average of 6.4. But there is a plateau in there and some very, very stiff pitches indeed.
Yeah, when you look at this profile, it is fascinating. Now, Matt, my estimation at the top of the show, and I'm sticking with it, I see Jordan Shane moving up, the young Canadian out of British Columbia. Well, I say young, 28 is young to me now. So, didn't
Young
used
to me now, Dave, I
but,
tell you.
yeah. So, I guess that's middle-aged Canadian, I guess, at 28. But here we go. It looks like we've got some action on the front. Saris, the pros closet, Matt, looks like they're activating here. We're going to go in with Matt Usborn. Wow, Matt has shown us that this man can scrape the bottom of the barrel. Super impressive job. Another Canadian here racing out of Vancouver, British Columbia. He's actually outside right now on his patio in a skyscraper in beautiful Vancouver. I know I talked about that last week. But Usborn, now I'm expecting a breakaway, Matt. And I'm going to say right after this sprint, we see, I'm thinking a group 10, 15 riders goes clear. And I think Usborn wants to be one of them today.
Well, that was a pretty emphatic prediction there, Dave. But you know, your Zwift Racing, we'll see if that happens. But as you said, Matt Usborn, very, very strong rider indeed. Completely unafraid to take a risk as well. And if you want to go long racing at this sort of level, you have to be very, very confident of your own ability to suffer and also to generate the sort of power to keep a pack like this at bay. But Usborn sitting there at the front, and to pick out a couple of riders that you might think would take a big gamble like that, you'd have to put Usborn on the table as one of those picks, Dave.
Yeah, Matt, if you could find 5 guys that were willing to commit and go all in like Matt did, it certainly could work. There's a possibility. It's got to be that perfect mix. Ingo, right, God, this is a big name. Danger man. Red alert when you see riders like Stefan Kirkmeyer, Michael Knudsen, Lionel Vias, and Freddie. Look at these names. Matt. It is a who's who of the ZRL on the front right now.
It certainly is. There's some real names to conjure with today. And when you think a little bit ahead towards the back end of this race, it really is going to suit some of the most powerful, explosive riders, but also riders that can maintain and put themselves in the hurt lock for a long period of time. And one of those is Lionel Viassan, fresh out of Belgium. He's got his duck, Gilbert. Of course, the real Gilbert, Philippe Gilbert, will be retiring at the end of 2022, but this man will not be retiring anytime soon. Neither will his duck. In front of a green screen, looking good, and has to be one of the big favourites today. Bottom right of your screen, that is the draft saving. Now, Viassan at the moment, as you can see, probably about 3/4 of the way down the peloton here, stuck in the middle, and this is compared to the rider on the front. So he's saving around 300 watts compared to the rider on the front, who I would estimate to be putting out about 420, something like that. But it's a massive saving, and just highlights, Dave, the importance of making sure you position yourself as well as you can, saving that energy, especially for what's to come today, because the final few Ks today, there's no armchair ride to the finish today, Dave.
No, and I tell you one thing, Lionel Viassan has got the brain to back up the body. And there is no doubt that, in my mind, I could see him winning today, certainly inside of the top 5, but even more so now, looking at how smart he is. You talk about Zwift craft, the ability to race and play in the game here. Nobody does it better than the Belgian. I mean, he proves himself week in, week out. So just tucked in the sweetest of the sweet spot there. He's not even getting churned out right now when you look at Viassan. Now, up at the front, it's going to start ramping up. These guys all know that we've got one sprint left. And Matt, if your role today, as we see Otema on one of the Dutch riders, this team is absolutely on the threshold of having a breakthrough week in the ZRL. It's Matt back to the front, Matt Usborn here. So here we go. They're galloping now, Matt. This is going to be a pivotal minute of racing right here, right now.
It is. Well, this is the white-clad jersey of Tibor Svan, 8 watts a kilo, 163 beats a minute, moving at a speed of 54.5 kilometers an hour, give or take. And he's opened up a lead of a second and a half over the man from draft. That's Bruce Bird leading the chase. Again, Bruce Bird is a rider that's unafraid to go clear, but he fires up his van, his draft power up. Well, it's not going to be particularly kind of useful when there's nobody in front of you, but he's still using it. You might as well drop it. But Tibor Svan is moving clear here, and he's holding off the group, and has extended his lead to 2 seconds. Let's have a look at the stats. Let's have a look at 6.1 watts per kilo. Physically, what does that look like? And he's looking very, very strong here, Dave, as we head towards the next intermediate sprint. He's got about 700 meters to go. Can he hold on?
This man is a wattage cottage, no doubt about it, as he is throwing down. But look at the group here. They're getting ready to dim New York City's power grid as these gladiators are ready to hit out. If Tibor can hold on and pick up 10 points, this goes beyond a next level effort. It is on like Donkey Kong out here right now. The sprint begins. They bring Tibor back into the group. We'll hit the reset button as this will be 10 deep at the line. Get your pencils out. We're ready to score them.
We sure are. Remember, it's PO Auto Ceramic Speed who lead with 24, then Movistar with 22. Who's going to open it up the front? It's Ed Veal of Draft. Also Canyon Esports with Spencer Segelbrook. The American Rick Ottomer isn't too far behind at all. This is a horrible drag to the line. Power-up's been dropped left, right and centre. This arrowhead formation at the front. Levinson is there. Ranker, Gjeldners as well. Who's going to take this one? Hollenbeck on the front for Insured now. Also going clear is Recknauer of the Kirkmail Racing Team. Glednes is on the front for Callis Esports, 13.4 watts a kilo from the Norwegian, ripping up this New York tarmac, taking a bite out of the Big Apple in the process. Looks like he's going to take this one, but is he going to be mobbed on the line? It looks like he's done enough. What an emphatic, strong victory that was in that points sprint there for Glednes. Went long, and he is looking dangerous. That was a superb sprint, Dave.
How about Takato Ikeda getting up there for Zwift Warriors Cycling? I'm going to score him in our top. Well, here we go. So Havard, nice job as he will take maximum bonification. Nicholas Pedersen there for 9 points. Zach Nair, wow, very strong ride from Zach out here today. Ollie Jones in at 4th. Ingo Reichardt in 5th. Vidar Mel. So Takeda Ikeda ends up in 6th in that sprint as we get our scoring on the way through. Wow, what a journey it has been. So let's go back and take a look at that sprint. Havard, Matt, he held him off.
He certainly did. He went very, very long. He's the first person to go that long and actually hold on. He nearly touched 14 watts a kilo up this long, long drag. It's going to favour the real punchier riders. And look at that, he had it. Well, I wouldn't say out of canter. Pedersen just rolling home in second. A clutch of power-ups there for Nair, Jones and Reichardt. All of these riders have featured so far, as has Vidar Mel. Remember, Movistar was second. Our Abacus is working overtime. Our little gnomes that work at Zwift headquarters, rattling away at the abacus to find out what the final scores are. And there it is, PO Auto Ceramic Speed lead with 36, and that's a solid lead to head into the final. 36 from Movistar's 27. Canyon have moved up, steadily progressing their way through. Insured, Kirkmare, Callas next, No Pins, Dutch Racing, and Beast Mode powered by Rose there in 10th place. So it is advantage PO Auto Ceramic Speed heading into the finale here, Dave.
It is. And you know what's noteworthy to me now is the real monsters in this group sat that sprint out. Lionel did not contest, and Michael Knudsen did not contest. So I'm expecting the final conversation includes those names, as I think they tried to maybe just take one sprint off to save it for the finale. 50 points are waiting for one rider at the finish line. Who gets to lick his plate clean out here? Well, I wouldn't be surprised, to tell you the truth, if it was one of those two names. Well, we'll see if someone can break through. Again, we saw him earlier talking about Leonard Tugels of BZR Sports Solid, opening up the legs a little bit, Matt, pushing things early, but expect to see him again as the final act is coming up. If you've enjoyed this has just been an appetizer leading us into the main course, which is that forward KOM. It's not the most epic of climbs, but it is the perfect palette for our riders to work on. Think 5-6%, Matt, for a little over a K. That's where you can get it done if you can climb like an angel.
Indeed. Well, as we mentioned before, the final sprint has been done and dusted, but yeah, we've got the little appetizers, the little amuse-bouche, as the French would say, the starters, the side order of onion rings before the final climb. That's Harlem Hill, closely followed by Sky Road. And talking of onion rings, he's taken a bite out of a few. Bird is off the front. He's flown the coupe yet again. This is one of the real characteristics of this rider. The Canadian from Team Vast Draft, should I say, has flown 7.2 watts a kilo, a long way to go, 8Ks to go. But this is a man who loves a solo effort, rides with real strength and panache.
Yeah, I mean, this is when you look at the watts that he is making here, again, another one of the really strong Canadians. Nice to see draft represented. And this will be the hero move of the day. So he's rolling off of the front. How much time can he build up? I wish a couple folks had gone with him, to tell you the truth. But Bruce Bird is going to play the role of hero out here today. He's gone pot committed, all in right now, up out of the saddle, flogging himself like a rented mule now. This is a committed rider on the front.
It certainly is. The man in red, he's got, a lot of tarmac. You can just see, if you look a little bit further down the road, the bunch aren't even in sight. They're just coming around the corner at the moment. He's opened up a lead of 5.5 seconds. It was at 1.6.5 seconds, but Bird pushing a steady 5.5 watts a kilo. And his heart rate, Dave, compared to everybody else, he's hovering about 170. Most other riders are kind of between 145 and 155. So he is properly riding at threshold now. But the gap is already starting to come down with 6.9 kilometers to go. And apart from this attack from Bird, my takeaway so far, Dave, is that there's still a couple of very big hitter teams with some superb climbers who have just sat back, let the sprints unfold. Maybe didn't want to participate because they didn't think they could maybe score points and waste energy. I'm talking about Saris and the Pros Closet with Dempster, Fleeman, Kooming. They've got riders that could potentially 3 or 4 of them could finish in the top 10, and also Legion of Los Angeles as well. We haven't seen those teams figure. Are they saving something very special for the final?
You'd have to think so. On Harlem Hill right now, you see the one micro rest that you're going to get out here today just occurred, as a lot of riders getting a very quick tuck there. Bruce Bird even taking advantage of that, as not ruffling any feathers, I guess would be fair to say, back in the peloton, because they have made the catch. So hit the reset button here with 6K to go.
6Ks to go. Bruce Bird is back safely in the coupe. He's going to have to fight to stay in the group now, but he wasn't given too much leeway at all. They know how dangerous a rider he is, and riders now jostling for position. A couple of the riders I just mentioned, Pasaris and the Pros Closet, watch out for them in that very brightly coloured canary kit to keep on the Bird theme. Green, yellow and white kit. Dempster, Fleeman, Larson, Kooming and Levinson. Also, we haven't seen too much of Freddie Ovett, although he has been floating around the head of the bunch. But now it's Recknauer, the German rider from the Kirkmare E-Racing team, who is starting to stretch his legs on this first of several long drags. I think they're on the lower slopes now of Harlem Hill. This isn't an easy run into the line. They don't really carry too much momentum into that final climb. So they're not exactly going to hit this final climb fresh at all, are they?
No, you'll feel like you've been have a brake dragging when you hit the bottom of the climb, to tell you the truth. Good to see Eric Levinson having an impact in the race out here today on Saris, the Pros Closet. Johannes Recknauer was the rider that we were just in camera with there, but this now will take us up onto the glass roads here, the infamous glass roads of New York. So we move into a new phase, climbing mode. Engage right now. Shell Power up on the front, is starting to see some new names now. These are the riders that theoretically have been saving themselves, or some of them at least have been saving themselves, but this is your OSS moment. Only the strong survive. We're going to start seeing riders getting dropped out the back end of this group because they are now punching tickets up on the front, Matt.
They certainly are. Just look at the shift in the change, the shape of this bunch as it starts to get elongated. Riders starting to fall out the back, as you said, Dave. Let's have a little look. Yeah, there's several riders. The bunch at the bottom of this climb was only 67 strong, and now it's whittling down to around 50 riders. Several riders just kind of falling out the back as
Tugels.
one. Your man again, Tugels, flies off the front at a whopping 7.5 watts a kilo. He's just gone over the top of that little climb there. There's a bit of a descent before the road kicks up again, using that momentum that he gave for that attack. Good move. But he's been joined by Freddie Ovett.
Oh my, this might be the most dangerous tandem, and here we go. All right, everybody has to respond to this. So Matt, at 4.5K to go, let's start taking a look. Freddie Ovitt is there. Island is having an incredible day today. We mentioned Leonard Tugels. There's Lionel Viasen coming up. So, oh my goodness, let's take some inventory. We've got a new front group. Matt, we're making the first critical selection right now.
We certainly sure are. That was a good split, but now they've just backed off a little bit, perhaps aware, cognizant of the fact that most of their major rivals are with them, so nobody really willing to take things up. Thiem on the front there, but look at the kind of watts per kilo. They've just dropped off a little bit. They know how intense, how hard this final couple of kilometres are going to be. Remember, the final climb itself, the KOM forward, which these riders are heading to along this glass sky road, is 1.36 kilometres long at 6.4%. As we get our first picture of Freddie Ovitt, the man with that hat trick of wins, riding for Legion in that really snazzy new kit of theirs. But again, he's saving as much energy as he can, dropping back down to 4 watts a kilo. Still a sizable group here, around 40 riders in this front group, but that initial drag before we got to this point certainly put a lot of riders in a fair amount of difficulty.
Freddie Ovitt, the only 3-time winner that we have in the ZRL, the most decorated rider. I've talked a lot about Lionel. I'd say Lionel has been the most consistent, especially remembering that 3 of the races that we do will be team time trials in season 3 of the ZRL. And at this point now, I am surprised we see this many guys in the group. They did back off just a little bit. So Tugels tried to see if anybody wanted to go with him, Matt, and there just wasn't quite enough cooperation up there. Let's go in with McGoldrick right now, as he's sitting right up in the vanguard of this group. A front row seat right now in Group 1, out on course with under 3K to go. There's Connor McGoldrick right now. Comfortable, I would say, under 170 beats per minute, 300 watts. Just another ride in Central Park.
Indeed, again, another rider with a very appointed Zwift room there, pain cave, whatever you choose to call it. But if they look down below them, they will see at Central Park, of course, this is part of the Zwiftization, I think, best way to call it, this elevated roadway, adding another kind of space age type of dimension to New York City. We've got a combination of a Blade Runner skyline and the original kind of skyline. I really do like the creative elements that they put into making this world as exciting and interesting as possible. But I tell you what, this is going to be a very, very interesting, if challenging, finale for the field. Now, 2 kilometres to go now as we still focus on McGoldrick. But this is where the road starts to rise. 6-7%. It then drops down again before that final kick up of 1,300 metres. Who is going to take things up early?
That's Jaden Jager there out of Wisconsin here in the United States for the Restart team. No surprise to see him pushing the accelerator down. Here comes Gavin Dempster now. Emmerich there as well. But you take a look at the front, I think that the biggest talents in this group are staying very, very patient right now. Look at Canyon. They've put 3 riders up into the top 8 right now, and I think this might be it. Go. Canyon is ready to hit out with authority at 1.3K to go. The Canyon train is leaving the station. You're going to want to jump on board, or you're not going to be winning a bike race here in New York City today. Canyon is flying the coop. BZR trying to hold on. Who's going to be able to withstand this pressure?
Well, this is a real ferocious tempo that's been set on the lower slopes. We're already on the measured part of this climb. Remember, the forward KOM 1.36 kilometers at 6.4%. But that average gradient, we're on a negative gradient now. There is a slight flatter section, a little bit of a plateau because it gets steeper and ridiculously steep, double digits near the top. We had 50 riders in this main group at the bottom of the climb. It's going to be split to pieces by the time we get to the top. Finesse Esports, Kiel Power up there. Stefan Van Els from BZR Sports Solid as well. On this steeper section here, riders dropping a lot of featherweight power-ups. That's the one you need. As Dave said before, makes you 10% lighter. Segerbrook now taking things up at the front for Canyon Esports.
Yeah, interesting to see them being used right now. This is a massive group, all things considered, keeping their head above water here as we're down to 750 meters. This is going to be a group sprint. I can't imagine too many people thought it would play out like this. Look at the pitch. Look how steep this is. They're climbing up an elevator shaft right now, Matt. Over 15% there for a moment. The climbing will end. It just can't end soon enough. What a well-played feather right there. Here we go, locked and loaded into the final few meters.
Yep, 500 metres to go now. We have a bigger group than I thought coming in towards the finish. Van Diemen on the front. Turgles is there. He's been one of the big animators. Ollie Jones also not too far away. Who is going to take the win in round 3? The road starts to kick up again. 3%, 4% now. 300 metres to go. Yisland, Turgles goes again. This man has found some amazing strength. Turgles and Segerbrook now going clear. Leonard Turgles have beaten our Sports Olive, but for the last couple of hundred metres, the road rears its brutal head. Turgles ahead of Turek. Turek not too far behind, a half a second. Has he got enough to hold things on? Turek comes through. Oh! It looks like Turek and Daniel Turk from Next Esports is going to be caught on the line. Well, Thrall is there as well. Kirkmare comes through on the line. Oh, we can't call it. A photo finish there between Thrall and Kirkmare. Well, an absolutely enthralling finale there. We'll get confirmation of the win, but I think it was by the slenderest of margins, Thomas Thrall of Insured, powered by Pedal Power, who took the win there ahead of Stefan Kirkmare of Austria. What a finish that was, Dave.
Yeah, due to the possibility of latency, we need to go to Zwift servers rather than the replay to verify that result. But Matt, I'm with you. I would sign off on that. That's what our eyes tell us. But again, we will go back and review that.
Indeed. Well, I'm hoarse. Freddie Ovett was up there as well. Ollie Jones. But that was it's such a complex finish. We know how hard that finish is, Dave. We'll get the replay in just a few moments' time. But the way it rises, drops, and then kicks again makes it such a complex proposition to get your timing right for the sprint.
Yeah, how about Thomas Thrall? I think that's the direction that we're going to see them go when we talk about the 50 points awarded to our winner today, Insured, presented by Pedal Power, by far the biggest win that they have had in the esports platforms. A massive, massive day here. And the Canadian, boy, we saw a lot of that maple leaf flag on the front today. Our Canadian friends certainly punched above their weight, that's for sure. I'm seeing Austrian Stefan Kirkmeier taking the silver medal, and then Matthias de Roos, BZR Sports Solid. So on the same team as Leonard Tugels, who obviously got up there for a 5th today. Freddie Ovett ending up, again, preliminary results right now, but I believe they're going to score Ovett in 4th. But BZR Sports Solid with 2 riders in the top 5, Matt, that's a lot of points right there for them. We'll go back and start tabulating, looking at those bonuses, adding it all up. But you know what? This did not disappoint. That was a great day of racing out here on the ZRL. Season 3, Race 3 in full effect.
Yeah, that was an absolutely superb finale. We saw a couple of lone riders trying to chance their arm and go clear, but the riders at the head of affairs towards the end were the riders that held just a little bit back for what is a brutally difficult finale and very technically difficult as well. Time for a sprint, absolutely brutal. We will try and get you the results as soon as we have them, just to confirm them. Of course, Dave explained they are preliminary until we get them confirmed. But Dave, I mean, how do you think that, that this was such a complex one to play? It relies on the legs towards the end, but how much tactics do you really think kind of came into play in the last 1,300 meters there? Because it wasn't really overly tactical, was it? You kind of just had to try and hold on for as long as you could.
Yeah, I have to wonder if BZR Sports Solid used a decoy with Leonard Tugels trying to set up Matthias de Roos, who came very, very close out there as well. That would be tactics, right? I mean, when you think about it, to be able to use a decoy like Leonard Tugels, who we talked about at the opening of the show, but a top 3 on a day like today is a great result. Again, that hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think that's the way they're going to go. But absolutely, I think the name of the game today, Matt, This isn't a tactic, but patience, being able to save it for the right moment and not let yourself get too excited in that run up to the last 500 meters, which was obviously easy to do out there. That was full gas racing all the way through 37K out there today. You can't ask for more than that.
You certainly can't. Well, of course, heading into the climb, it was PO Auto Ceramic Speed who'd accumulated 36 points out on the road. They'll obviously have accumulated points as well. But it's, well, we've just heard from Zwift headquarters. The abacus has been completed. And here we go. Let's have a look at what the final results were. And they should be popping onto our screen very, very shortly indeed. It was Thomas Thrall confirmed as the winner for Insured, powered by Pedal Power. A wonderful win by him. 47 minutes and 21 seconds. Stefan Kirkmaier of Kirkmaier E-Racing there in second. Great riding by Matthias de Roos. Of course, the newly promoted BZR Sports Solid. They're going to be very pleased with that. Freddie Ovett, the ever-present Freddie Ovett there in fourth. Then we have, well, one of the most aggressive riders of the day, making two riders in the top 5 for BZR. Turgles in fifth. Brian Duffy Jr. in sixth. Ollie Jones there in seventh. Then we have Kjell Power, Anders Oldager for Speed. Pim van Diemen, the first rider home for Movistar. So page number 2 is Michael Knudsen. Then we have Spencer Sugarbrook, Stefan van Alst. He's the third rider home for the newly promoted squad. So they've scored a lot of points today. Nicky Haag is there as well. Then we have Yul Davies, a teammate of his, Osborne Vujasan, Conor McGoldrick, Daniel Turek, the ex-Road Pro, and then rounding out the top 20, Daniel Jamrodzik. So, and these riders spread, the top 20 spread over 4 seconds. Hardly surprising given the ferocity of that finish. We will get, hopefully, the points score for you. So the team with the most points accumulated on the night run out the winners, and the team with the most points then gets 20 points towards their league total. And for league results, please head over to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League. And there we go. On the night, it is PO Auto Ceramic Speed who take the win with 86 points ahead of Insured, powered by Pedal Power. Second place equal, in fact, BZR Sports Solid, and then Canyon Esports in fourth with 79. Kirkmaier fifth, Movistar sixth after a great start. Seventh, Next Esport. Eighth, Finesse Esports. Ninth, BRT Mountain Fuel. And then the 10th, Legion of Los Angeles. A real change around in the order there. A fascinating finale. Calistair 11th, 12th, Restart. 13th, Saris. 14th, Zwift Warriors. 14th, No Pins. 16th, Dutch E-Racing. And 17th, Beast Mode, powered by Rose. And then Team Swedish Zwifters draft there with a solitary point. So
important to note, Matt, there, if you go back to that first page, that win from Thomas Thrall was worth 1 point in the season total. So we scored 20 points for the winning team. Now, they tied with 82 points, talking about his Insured presented by Pedal Power team. The tiebreaker was the best placed rider at the finish. So Thomas Thrall doing double dip duty there for his team. He not only wins the race and gets that acclaim, but his win was worth an extra point today for his team. That's a big day for Insured, presented by Pedal Power.
It is one of their biggest days. And what we're going to do now is bring in a very, very well-known face indeed, a face of cycling and the face of Zwift. It is Rassan Basati. We're going to bring him in for a new feature of the show, Rassan's Replay. Rassan, first and foremost, mate, thanks for joining us on the ZRL. Great to have you here. Can you talk us through exactly what points you've managed to pull out of what was a remarkably exciting race for Rassan's first ever replay?
See, first rodeo here. I got my mute button on, but I'm back.
No
just
worries,
saying, hey, thanks for having us here. Thanks for having me, Matt. Yeah, I sat back, watched the entire race, listened to you and Dave come in with your thoughts on what the race would be, and honestly, seeing and knowing the course, punchy course. Of course, we thought, it'll be a little bit more fireworks. So I just want to go over the 3 sprints, which were pretty important, but not a lot of action. So the first sprint, this first guy went way too soon and was caught at the line by multiple people. And sprinting is all about timing. And in Zwift racing, it's all about, the timing, the patience, and having those power-ups. Sprint 2, kind of the same scenario. Not a lot of excitement going on there. It's just a sprint. And I was really, really surprised that there weren't much more action post-sprint, given the course being so heavy and a lot of really phenomenal riders out there that could put the law down and counterattack. So again, not a lot of excitement after these sprints, and I think it goes back to these riders were really concerned about the finale. The final up in the sky is a demanding sprint, and these sprints are a demanding finish, and these sprints were so close. We'll have to wait to another course, and maybe after getting this race under their belt, they'll attack this course a little differently next time, because just sitting back and waiting for the sprints or waiting for the finale really didn't play out for a lot of guys.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, we had a couple of riders. Yeah, we had a couple of riders go pretty early for these sprints, but I think you're quite right. I think the fact that these sprints weren't used as a catalyst or a kind of stepping stone for further attacks maybe reflects on riders just holding themselves back for the finale and almost unafraid. You do get that quite often, Rasan. But great to have your insight. Just before you disappear, what about the actual finish of the race? I mean, that was spectacular, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, finishing in the sky of New York City is tough. These pitches are so steep and they come out of nowhere. You're riding at 6%, which a lot of us can do really fast, but then all of a sudden it kicks up to 14, 15, 16%. And when you're on these smart trainers, it just takes everything out of you. So again, it really boiled down to it's like I think of 5 things on the road when you have to sprint. It's patience, it's timing, it's power, and you definitely got to have the nerve when you're on when you got to have the finish. So here you just remove the nerves, have patience, have power, and you saw what happened in the finale. What a good job.
Well, Rasan, great to have you and your insight in the show. We'll see you after the women's race, and make sure you've got your notepad out, jotting down all the action from what should be a superb race. We'll catch you later, Rasan. Dave, we'll catch you also at the back end of the show. We'll be reunited for a bit of a debrief, but next up, it's Hannah Walker to join me for the women's race.
Hey, Matt, how are you doing? What a great race there.
It was absolutely fantastic, wasn't it? It really was a superb event. Now, Hannah, we've got 16 teams for the women's race. Do you want to pull out some of your favourites? Because today, as we've seen in the men's race, a really, really demanding course. It was interesting to see the way that it was ridden. Of course, the men and women quite often do race differently, but that was a tough one, wasn't it?
It was a very tough one, and certainly played out very differently to how I expected it to go. However, in saying that, I do think it'll be a lot splintered for the finale of the women's race. Into the teams, first one for me to look out for is the Movistar squad in that splendid blue jersey with the big white M on the front. They're just in the middle row there. For me, they're a new E-team. They're a World Tour team, as we know, and a Women's World Tour team. And I think that the way that they've come together over the last few weeks as a new composition of riders after their talent ID has been tremendous. Beth McIver, outstanding rider. Becky Story as well from the Isle of Man, really one to watch out for in esports as well. My second team to look out for is Canyon Esports, a team that's been around for a couple of years now and has the ever experienced Mary Wilkinson amongst the roster. I think this course should certainly suit her as a rider, and she is able to win and perform on all sorts of terrain. Also, a rider who's been quite impressive. I don't know about you, Matt, but in the last few weeks, Cécile Lejeune, and especially into season 2, always keeps improving on her performance. So I think as a team, Canyon Esports, another squad to watch. And then you can't discount either or not mention Hino. The team in red, the 5 women who always manage to get all 5 riders in that front group for the key moments. made up of national champion Cecile Hansen there, Louise Huback, Alice Lethbridge, Caroline Williams, and Vicky Whitelaw. That 5 rider roster really is tremendous, and I think today they are going to tear it up.
They certainly are. I mean, they have won every single race of season 1, every single race of season 2. The harder the course, the better this set of riders go. They are the dominant team. They are the team to beat. But of course, it is a points race. We've got 3 intermediate sprints throughout the circuit. We go through the New York Sprint Arch on 3 occasions, where there'll be 10 points for first place, down to 1 point for 10th, and then lots of points on offer for the top 30 riders to cross the line at the top of the final climb, which is the forward KOM. It really is a challenging, arduous circuit, and it's worth giving a quick shout out before we do start to the newly promoted teams. You mentioned Movistar. Watch out for Beast Mode powered by Rose, and also newly promoted Turbo as well. It's almost a 3-2-1. I'm looking at my countdown clock on the laptop next to my other stream, and the race is off. So here we are. We are up and running, and this should be an absolutely superb race. They're straight out of the pens. We've timed our intro, Hannah, to absolute perfection. What kind of race are you expecting? We've got these sprints, the first of which comes at around 7 kilometers, and then obviously they do several laps. Basically, this course is the Gotham Grind Reverse. This course, the NYC KOM After Party, is 3 laps of the Gotham Grind Reverse, and then once up the forward KOM. So it's a real challenging course. So how do you think the riders are going to play this one?
It's a really attritional course. It's a very hard one, and I actually think similarly to what happened in the men's race, and with the finale being so demanding and so difficult and so hard, we might perhaps see a lot of riders and teams playing it safe because of how difficult it is. Those points at the finish line are so important, and there's so much on offer. I think that the teams will be going for those intermediate sprints, but we might not see many attacks or counter-attacks after that. Teams want to try and get as many riders to the top of the climb at the finish on the forward KOM, get as many riders to the top as possible.
Indeed. It is going to be an interesting one, whether the course, I mean, sometimes when it's a brutally difficult course, you do see riders, as you just said, Hannah, and also what Dave was saying earlier on, just back off a little bit. We're looking at Dominique Eustace from Team TFC, just inside her rather well-appointed pain cave there, just tapping out 4.2 watts a kilo, 46 kilometres an hour on this flattish section of the course. And one thing you'll notice about the New York course is there aren't that many stretches of road that are flat. You're either descending or you're climbing. No climb is too long, so you're up and down. But what that does on this particular course is really, really break the rhythm. And it's not particularly easy. You need to stay really, really focused, don't you? You can't be on the back foot you can't be on the back foot for too long at all. You need to be very, very attentive. I think especially after these sprint points, Hannah, because they could potentially provide a springboard for 1 or 2 riders just willing to take a bit of a chance and try things differently.
Definitely, Matt, and not only just the springboard, but actually be a split. If you have the 10 points on offer for the first 10 riders across this intermediate sprint points, and if you're not paying attention or you kind of too far back, if there is a split in the peloton in the bunch, it's going to be ever so difficult to move yourself back up towards the front, get yourself back into contention. And don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing that it's a hard course. It just means that teams have to play their tactic, play their role very, very differently because of, as you just mentioned, there's not so many places for the rest and respite which you'd normally be able to get.
Now there's a couple of little descents where you can actually get into a super tuck for a brief position. Of course, in real life, the super tuck has now been banned, but it's not banned in Zwift. It does give you that little opportunity to have a bit of a free wheel, catch your breath just a little bit as we go. We'll start to look at Dare Taylor in a few seconds' time. Still a fair distance to go here. The rider from Ireland, 2.6 kilometres under their wheels at the moment. Alice Lethbridge just rolling to the front, pole up there as well. Let's have a look at Dare Taylor. She's from one of the new teams, newly promoted divisional teams, from the community division, should I say. Team Turbo. Blair Taylor there. Teammates Louise Hart, Laura Payne, Charlotte Watts. That's a very appropriate name for racing on Zwift, and Sabrina Curtil. But no attacks just as yet. I think the rider's just making sure they're saving as much energy as they can. But I do think you're right. I think there'll be some teams that will come into this race with a real structured plan in relation to how they use their resources, because what you can't really do, and what you'll definitely pay for at the end of this race, if you went for all 3 sprints, for example, Hannah, you're an ex-racer yourself, if you went for 3 of those sprints, that's really going to take a lot out of you for a difficult finale, isn't it? As we look at Beth McIver, one of the real successes of last season, and a cheeky transfer over to the Movistar team this year.
It really eats into your resources. The more efforts that you make, the more attacks, the more energy you expend throughout the race, it eats into those resources that you're going to need at the end of the race, especially on that finale. We saw how hard it was on that climb for the men's race, and with the ramps up of 17%, it makes it incredibly difficult. So I think here it's about riders being efficient of where they make those efforts. I'm not to say that you can't make any attacks or go for those intermediate sprints and pick up some of the points, but you've got to be ever so efficient. And I think that's especially where the sports directors really come into their own of coming into the race with a solid tactic, a solid game plan, with each rider having a set task of how they're going to race.
Indeed. That's a great shot of Beth McIver there. As she moved to the front, you'd see her draft saving actually go to 0, because she was the rider effectively leading the peloton, the rider therefore taking most of the wind, cutting into that air. But now she's dropped back further into the pack, actually dropping towards the back. She's saving a considerable amount of power to move at the same speed as the rider in front. She's actually having to spend, it was back then, about 130 watts less. And the position that Beth McIver is riding at the moment, although we're on a slight drag, not much, almost imperceptible, in fact, only 1%. The steeper the climb, actually less saving there is when you're riding with a draft. As we've seen, we're talking about watt savings. One rider who isn't saving any watts at the moment, who's made a bold move off the front with still a long distance to go, is Courtney Nelson of Saris and the Pros Closet, kicking out, well, at 1.6 or 7 watts a kilo. A good little attack here, and a bold one. Still a long way to go.
This is a bold one, but also she got a slight gap, but actually on this ever so slight downhill, the peloton moving much quicker than her. She's been swept up now, but if she can just get herself back into that draft effect at the back of the bunch, she can just try and recover. You can just see 172 beats per minute for Nelson. She's just starting to lose the wheels now. She just needs to make a bold effort now just to get back into the bunch. But great to see our first attack there. Not afraid to give it a go, and that is what we like to see, some aggressive racing.
That was very aggressive indeed. A bit of a surprise, actually. She went off the front, opened up a lead of a couple of seconds, but as you said, she was caught on a really, really fast sector of the course. That little downhill sector, that the bunch have got a lot of momentum, especially when riders are constantly moving to the front, putting a lot of power out. That drags the bunch on a lot, and all the riders behind, of course, saving power. So she was reabsorbed very quickly. As we look at Aleza Hag, one of the newly promoted squads, of course. This is Beast Mode, powered by Rose. What a cracking name for a team. Sticking out 4.1 watts a kilo. Looking good. It looks like that pain cave, probably her garage by the looks of the breeze block formation just at the back there. Opted for a vest as well, keeping herself as cool as she can. But it's interesting to see, isn't it, how over the next few races, Hannah, that the newly promoted teams actually get to grips with racing at this sort of level. But so far from what we've seen, both in men's and women's racings, these newly promoted teams have bedded in very, very well indeed, haven't they? It just shows the quality in the lower division too.
It does. They've really found their feet, and I've been incredibly impressed by these teams who've been promoted in both the men's and women's, and especially our wildcard teams as well. Inspired by not only great squad, and as you say, a great name, their kit is absolutely fantastic. I love it.
Maybe at the end of the season we should have a vote on what's the best kit is. Let's not get too controversial in our position as commentators. We have to remain impartial, although we do have our cheeky favourites, because we're coming up to the first sprint of the day today. Looking at a closer look at Hag, they just see the number on the back, but a couple of riders starting to go clear now. Laura Simnek of Insured, powered by Pedal Power. As you can see, it'll only be just about 500 metres towards that sprint. It is a nasty little drag for this one. It's certainly not a flat one. The sprint is timed over 400 metres, or measured, should I say, over 400 metres. Nobody dropping any power-ups just yet. The road slowly rising, then it kicks up just towards the sprint point itself. It will come into view just round this right-hander. The road drops and then picks up a little bit. And in fact, the road continues to rise past the sprint point. And they should be opening up their sprints now, because they've only got about 300 metres to go now. Things really starting to hot up at the front. Bexy Dew from Canon Esports is there. Paige Bolt from 2024. Cryardi T also up at the front as well. Armitage there. Frisk, Stevenson, Sidlick, Kummer, Alice Lethbridge. We know how strong she can be as well. Won't be long before they've got the finishing banner in sight for the opening sprint of the day. The road continues to ride. Good riding here by Simek of Slovenia. She's looking very, very strong indeed. She's opened up a half a second gap, but she's going to be mobbed at the finish line. Caroline Williams is there. Lewis Adegeest of the Ionian Racing Team, this is the Dutch rider, has opened up a nice half a second gap here. Well, the Dutch rider has taken the field by storm, but it looks as if she might be overhauled on the line by Svardstrom there of Team Swedish Swifters. We will get confirmation. But Lois Adgeest there, Hannah, putting a very, very good sprint in, but I don't think she got it on the line. We'll have a look at the photo finish and get confirmation, but a good and exciting opening sprint, the first one done of the night.
A brilliant confident sprint there from Adegeest, just overhauled on that finish line, very, very tight, especially for second, third and fourth place for the points. But for Adegeest, really took that up strongly. And great to see different teams getting involved early on in the sprints and get the results confirmation as soon as possible. But you can just start to see now a few gaps opening up after that first sprint, and you can just start to see the damage that has been done.
Well, it's Kristen Kulczynski on the front. The road continues to rise here. It's no easy. There's no easy road immediately after that. Lizzie Duncombe also having a bit of a go here for Vision E Racing, the British rider. We know how strong. We know how she would prefers the attritional races. But it was at Vardstrom that took it just on the line. Adgeest went a little bit too early, but it was a bold move by the Dutch woman. But it was the Swede that took the win ahead of Hermansson, Klotterbuck, Kummer, Lethbridge, Paulus from Team 2024, Embring, Larson and Louise Huback. The first rider there home for Heino. So what a score, what a start that is for Team Swedish Swifters. Well, that's going to leave a few teams with a lot to do. Very, very interestingly, 23 points ahead of Ionian with 9. Movistar, good score by them in third with 7. Then Beast Mode with 6. Heino Racing Team also with 6. And then the other team to score points on the opening sprint of tonight, Team 2024, courtesy of Shayna Paulus there with 4 points. But what a start to the night by Team Swedish Swifters. We've got a replay coming up here, Hannah. Just talk us through the last few hundred metres, because the women in blue, yellow and white rode that one superbly.
They did. That's one of the strongest performances I've seen at the start of a race from the Team Swedish Swifters. You can just see Adegeest went quite early. She had 2 or 3 bike lengths, but just on the right-hand shoulder of Adegeest, you can see Svardstrom just coming round, timing it to perfection. It was only in the last 20 metres or so that Svardstrom was able. Adegeest really did hold on very, very strongly, and here you can just see how tight it was on the line as well for third and fourth place. Movistar there in the fourth as another replay. But I have to say, really impressive stuff there by Team Swedish Swifters.
That was a big points haul.
Sorry, it was, and a lot of I was just going to say, a lot of power-ups used straight after that sprint as well. So a lot of draft power-ups. It just shows that the riders using the draft power-up actually just to get a little bit of respite straight after that sprint. And as I said before, the bunch has definitely been whittled down. We've lost around 20 riders from the group. Some riders at 5 seconds: Meredith Kessler, Merle Brunner, Natalia Franco from 2024.
Indeed. Well, talking of that dominant performance by Team Swedish Swifters, it's one of the hardest team names to say, all those S's in a row. Team Swedish Swifters have finally got it down, I think, is Svardstrom. It's Anna Zvardstrom. Let's have a look at her stats. I do like that kit, though. Talking of kits, that is one of my favourites. So look at that medal haul on the back there.
Wow.
Certainly a very, very decorated rider indeed. Looking good at the moment. 3.2 watts a kilo, 92 RPM there. 2 power-ups. Well, I tell you what, let's give Anna Zvardstrom some more power-ups. Anybody watching on YouTube, make sure you get your phone out, fire up your companion app, and give Zvardstrom a couple of ride-ons, please. Not power-ups. You cannot give power-ups. That would be highly illegal. So please don't try and give anybody a power-up. It's only a ride-on. Oh, God, it's been a long day. But Zvardstrom looking good there, so please get involved. Get involved in the comment section. Tell us what you like about the Zwift Racing League. Tell us what you'd like to see. Tell us how much you're enjoying the racing. But importantly, please do get involved. This is all about the community. And remember, the Zwift Racing League isn't just about racing in the Premier Division. Although registration for riding in the community divisions is now closed, if you're an individual rider, you can still find a place on one of the pre-existing teams to have a taste of what it's like to race on Zwift. And also, once you've watched the broadcast here, if you head over to the Zwift Community League, you can see Zwift racing in the community as well. So not just the Premier Division of racing, it's all about the community. And 3 teams have represented. So let's look at the average power data on the right-hand side here. You can just see it's Le Burma there, 4.4 watts a kilo. Average pace, 227 watts. So it's really interesting here, looking at the average power, though. I mean, and as we talked about in the men's race, Hannah, it's not about the rider that pushes out the most power in this race, is it? It's about the rider who uses their power in the most economic way. They might deliver big spikes of power, but you want to kind of keep your average as low as you can, don't you, in this? Which is quite kind of contrary to the way you train, in fact.
It is, because when you're training, you're wanting to try and do the biggest numbers possible. You're wanting to try and ride to your threshold, to your peak powers. You're trying to train to increase them and make yourself a better athlete. When it comes to racing, you want to be as efficient as possible. Try and save as much as you can throughout the whole race, and sit back, use the wheels as much as possible. Try not to go to the front of the bunch and create the draft for everybody else to benefit from. So I say it's very, very different in racing as it is to training. And a lot of these riders will know that. They'll know the points of where in the peloton to position themselves to benefit from that draft. And as we saw before, the efficiency score and the efficiency rating really gives you a real clear vision of how many watts you can save by sitting in the wheels.
Yeah, it's a real art, isn't it? The more that you ride on Zwift, the more that you race on Zwift in particular. This is a group actually that's a little bit further back, as we've seen already. It's been quite an attritional race. A very, very high tempo was set after that first intermediate sprint. It was, in fact, Catherine Kulczynski. We know she is an exceptionally strong rider. We mentioned it week in, week out that she rides exclusively on Zwift, but she really did put the hurt on through that sprint, and it didn't allow anybody to recover. So if you're struggling through that sprint point and then somebody continues over the top, all that's going to do is kind of really kind of spread the field out and split it. And that's exactly what she's done with that acceleration, that constant whittling down process. And we only have around 42 riders in this front group now. So the field size has almost halved, and we've still got 23 kilometres to go.
We do, and there's a couple of riders just losing the wheels at only 1 or 2 seconds behind the group. If they're unable to get back into that draft, get back into the bunch as soon as possible, it could be looking like the group again will be whittled down with 23 kilometres remaining. We're going to see a much fractured bunch than what we saw in the men's race.
Now we certainly are. Riders fighting to stay in contact, fighting to conserve the energy, because they'll know what this finish is like. And we'll be coming up to sprint number 2 in around 3 kilometres time, 3 or 4 kilometres time approximately. It's Caroline Williams we're looking at there. It was interesting, I noticed, looking back to that opening sprint, Hannah, that Heino didn't score that many points at all. This is Caroline Williams. Again, a really, really talented rider indeed. In fact, all of the riders here are talented, but Caroline Williams, very, very strong indeed, making it look easy. Look at the way she's pedaling. a relatively kind of a slower cadence there, but look how still her upper half is. She's really pushing that power through that static bike very, very efficiently indeed, isn't she?
A very smooth pedaling style as well. She's so efficient there, and this is what we're also talking about, not just about where you're making your attacks or your efforts or moving up in the bunch, but actually the rest of your body as well, making sure that all the power that you're producing is going straight through the legs into the pedals to propel yourself forward, being as efficient as possible. Great fluid pedaling style there, Matt.
It certainly is. Well, Williams in that front group. Cecilia Hansen is there, Huback, Lethbridge and Vicky Whitelaw. All of the name tags that you're seeing. A flurry of different flags. Just picking up all of the riders from Team Hino. Dominant team in esports on the women's side of things. We really have dominated the last couple of seasons. But interestingly, to get back to my point, as we're still looking at Caroline Williams over surveying the scene on her balcony there. Looks like she might be in a kind of a games room or something like that with the fitness ball on the left hand side. Is that Hino only scored 6 points? Do you think they're that confident the team had? And we know how good they are, we know how strong they are in depth, how versatile they are. Do you think they've got that much confidence that they're just maybe saving themselves for the back end of this race, because they have the kind of depth and strength where they can possibly finish one of their 5 riders in the top 10 or 15 riders quite, I wouldn't say easily, but they can definitely do that on a good day.
Do you know what? I think you're right, and I do think they're saving something. I think they decided, let's not go all out in that first sprint. Let's save it for the back end of the race. Try and accumulate as many of our riders to the back end of the race where the big points are scored on the finish line. So let's not forget, for the first rider across the line, you have 50, then 40, 35, 30, 27, 25, and then all the way down in one descending down to 30th position. So I think they wanted to see how that first sprint played out and try and see what the other teams are doing as well, but save things for the back end. We have around 1 kilometre until we go through sprint number 2, and already a big mass from at the front. Riders battling for position. You can start to feel that tension now. Riders trying to find their position. Pole at the front there.
Indeed. Well, one team that didn't score too many points at all, they didn't actually score on the opening sprint, was Canyon Esports. They're going to want, I'd imagine, to make amends before they slip too far down, and that gives them a lot of work to do towards the back end. Shayna Paulus there, I noticed a lot of blue, that new livery that Team 2024 have got. Such an aggressive team. They're going to want to score some points. They're another one of the top teams that didn't score any points. It's a real complex sprint, this one. Again, it elevates, but the actual finishing gantry in terms of actually aiming for the sprint doesn't come into sight until quite a way. Well, it's to the last couple of 100 metres. It kicks up to the line. We saw that early opening up of the sprint for the last one. And here we go. We've got the trees on the right-hand side. The road gently meanders to the right. The road starts to drag up, and this is where riders starting to drop the power-ups. Alice Lethbridge there, Huback, Adagis to open things up very early for Ionian is there as well. Lizzie Duncan there too, but it is Lethbridge and Adagis here on the front. A clutch of riders. Nobody's gone too early here. Frisch now moves to the front as well. Kind of flotilla. A kind of blizzard of power-ups are being used. This is going to be a very, very close one. Bexy Dew there. Nikai Larson, Huback is at the front at the moment. Larson, Catherine Curry coming in very late for I Race Like a Girl. Larson, I think, might get that one. Adagist, in fact, from second place, moves in to first by the looks of that. We'll get confirmation it was Adagist, second in the opening sprint, and now takes the second sprint of the night ahead of Catherine Curry, of course, the winner of a couple of rounds in Season 2. Larson, Huback, Hansen, Whitelaw. Look at that. 4 riders from Hino in the top 10 there. Hermanson there in 8th, Tag and Lethbridge. So making amends there, Team Hino, with 4 riders inside the top 10. But a very, very good and strong sprint here by the Dutch woman Adagist. She's obviously riding very well, trying to score points early on.
Well, learned from the first sprint that she did. So she managed to take the maximum points of 10. Great to see that, and as you say, 4 in the top 10 for Hino. We'll see as well the overall standings very shortly once it's all tallied up. And there we go, right on cue. Team Swedish Swifters still leading with 34 points. Hino Racing Team, after that effort, go straight into second with 22 points. Ionian Race Team, thanks to Adagis there with 19. Movistar E-Team with the 14. I Race Like a Girl with the 9. And brilliant to see. It just sees what a difference it makes. It makes when riders can get themselves into that top 10 like Heino and really score highly.
As you say, from 6 points in the first round, they really did kind of mob the front there, getting everybody up there. This is the slow motion replay just coming through again. Look at all the power-ups that Vic can use, but look at the amount of red jerseys in pole position. No doubt about the winner of that one. As you said, Adagis timed this one to absolute perfection. She's just moving to the front just now, and that's a very distinctive Ionian Race Team tip. Catherine Curry from I Race Like a Girl in that pin kick didn't quite have it on the line despite dropping a power-up. And actually, Adagis took that one without a power-up. Well, that just shows how strong she is in the sprint. She was up against 2 riders with aero power-ups, which reduces the drag coefficient by 25 seconds. So fair play. To go head-to-head, Hannah, with 2 riders with power-ups and still win, that shows you are on a very, very good day indeed.
Very good day. That is so impressive, and also to back up your sprint from the first sprint as well, to still have that amount of effort left in the legs, and looking very, very strong and promising for the back end of the race. But great to see Ionian Race Team get so many points on the board, and I'm wondering, because they've got a couple of riders in this front group still, I'm wondering if perhaps Adagis has said, right, I'll sacrifice myself and score as high as possible for the intermediate sprints. The rest of you try and get to the finale, the demanding finale at the top of the climb and score those points there. So they're really splitting up the tactics perhaps.
They certainly are. It is quite interesting, and that's where the tactical side of things in racing really comes to the fore on a relatively complex course where it isn't kind of cut and dry. You really do need to look at your resources and also base you've got a plan that generally you would stick to. But then what comes into play a lot is how riders are feeling on the night as well, and you do have to adapt as the race goes on. But interestingly, Hannah, just looking at the field at the moment, there are only 34 riders in this front group, and a key rider who's actually missed it, who got dropped or had a problem, I'm not too sure exactly what, but sitting at 20 seconds now is Mary Wilkinson, Bexy Dew. So a couple of 3 riders from Canyon Esports are out of the back, Kirsten Poll as well. So that is a big surprise. So this front group has really been whittled down after that very, very fast sprint, and a couple of riders again continued the momentum through the sprint, making it difficult to get back in contact.
Yeah, that is very surprising. Bexy Dew was one of those riders trying to get involved in that intermediate sprint, so it just shows such an intense effort and how much damage it can do to you and the team, and that's a detrimental effect at 20 seconds. I don't think, and as we know now, and I look at the timings, it's gone out to 28 seconds, so there's going to be no coming back for that group off the back. So that 2 riders for Canyon Esports out the back, also Kirsten Poll, so that's 3 riders for the team in the pink and purple jerseys.
Canyon Esports again on a difficult day there, but all 5 riders from Heino are in the group. You can just see them in the red jerseys there with that very distinctive white H. A couple of riders from Movistar in the mix as well. I Race Like a Girl are represented by Catherine Curie. Cryo RDT are very well represented indeed. They have Megan Hermitage, Gamst, and also in the mix there with Natalie Stevenson. Barbara Frisch is there for the Ionian Racing Team, along with one of her teammates as well. So there's Adagis just at the back. So Adagis still in this front group, a first and a second. It just depends on what she can do in the final. But also, when you look at the tactics of scoring points, there could be the reverse psychology. I mean, when you look at the way that Team Swedish Zwifters are riding very, very strongly tonight, it could be to try and score points early on, because you know that you might struggle towards the back end, given the difficult finale. That certainly isn't one to suit the sprinters, is it, this one? So it could be getting points early on is almost an insurance policy. I'm not saying that's necessarily the tactic that they are employing, but it is another way to look at it, isn't it?
I love that one, Matt. Insurance policy. Love it. It definitely is. I think, as you say, there's horses for courses, or courses for... And I think for those sprinters, perhaps, if you know you're not going to be in the mix, in the finish, go for the points early on. Get those points on the board. As long as you finish at the end of the race and you cross that finish line, you will have those points on the board no matter what. So I think you're certainly right. Let's go for those early points. Let's try and surprise everyone as well, and try and flood the intermediate sprints like Swedish Zwifters did in that first one.
Yeah, they really did mob the front there, but I think that might have raised the alarm bells for High Note. Maybe they did kind of change the tactics, because it was very, very sudden, as we see. Natalie Stevenson from Cryo RDT just rolling off the front, a little cheeky stealth move perhaps there from the rider from Scotland, but she's immediately been brought back to heel. Here's the stats of the Scot, sitting at 5 watts a kilo. Big effort there, but she's immediately been brought back by the peloton. Couple of riders from a team at 2024 at the front there. That's Paige Bolt, also there Kristin McClinsky and Shayna Powler. So 2024 are a squad that have, well, at least 3 riders in that front group. Elisa Haag is there for Beast Mode, powered by Rose as well. So still a lot of big names in the front. The pace has eased ever so slightly, be coming up to the final intermediate sprint of the day in about 3 kilometers time. The last opportunity to score points out on the road. Remember, 10 points for the winner, down to 1 point, and then we take on the finale, which essentially comes in 2 stages, as we still focus on Natalie Stevenson there. It's a really tough finale, this one, isn't it? I mean, we've got the final climb, which we know about, Hannah, that climb to the line. But then we've got that Harlem Hill and Sky Road, which we saw in the men's race split things up even before the climb itself. So the last 6 or 7 Ks of this race isn't just about the final 1,300 metres. The approach to that point is very difficult. And I can see teams like 2024 maybe trying to, a team that we know like to race hard, trying to thin this group out even more before the final climb to the line.
They'll certainly want to shake some riders out of this group. We still have 34 riders currently in the front. Anna Embring just sitting just off the back in 34th, but that's where the tactics come into their own. What do teams want to do? Do they want to try and string things out at that 6 kilometer to go mark? Do they want to try and keep it together and then have a do or die effort with 1-2 kilometers to go? It's teams now start having to communicate with each other, getting the direction from the sports directors. Make sure you're taking a little bit of hydration on as well at this point when the pace really has dropped down, and they're able to, on this ever so slight downhill section, get a little bit of respite. As we look at Steph Clutterbuck, one of those riders who has been transitioned from Cryo RDT into the Movistar E-Team through their Talent ID program. And you can just look at actually how hard this race is. 184 beats per minute for Steph Clutterbuck. So this is no easy race despite the slowing of the pace. 54 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, a quick speed. I mean, there's some real quick sections, but they are, once you build up the pace, you're then generally hitting a little uphill section. It really breaks your rhythm, this circuit. It's great to train on. I really do like to ride. I mean, it's beautiful to look at Central Park. Of course, we've got the elevated glass sections of Central Park as well. This combination of the real world, real Central Park, and almost like a Blade Runner-esque kind of skyline that we have. It really is one of my favourite worlds to ride in. We'll be heading up on to that skyline a little bit later on towards the back end of this race, but we'll be staying in regular Central Park for the next sprint, which is coming up very, very shortly. 3 riders from Cryo RDT just on the front there. That's Maja Winterbrandt from Norway. That's Natalie Stevenson there from Scotland, and Megan Page as well there from Ireland. They've been riding very, very well indeed. And there's 3 riders from Movistar in this front group as well. So the wildcard team, unsurprisingly, already making an impact as we look at Maja Winterbrand. Get a nice rhythm being set by the rider from Cryo RDT. And Stevenson just drifting off the front. Not long, they'll be winding themselves up now, Hannah, for the next sprint, the final sprint before that nasty haul to the line. Please do get involved. Get on your companion app. I can see a few ride-ons being fired in. Please continue to get involved and encourage these riders, because we're heading towards the final sprint of the night here, Hannah.
Talking of teams who've got multiple riders in this front group, a team that has been promoted from the community division into this Premier division, His beast mode powered by Rose with those 3 riders, Shalau, Haag, and just see one of their riders moving up towards the front as well. It's brilliant to see a team that has been promoted from that community division, and we were speaking about it at the top of the show, Matt, how brilliant it is to see that they've really grabbed this Premier Division with both hands and how well they're performing.
Certainly, it is good to see the way they've adapted so well. Another team with a couple of riders in the mix there in that familiar yellow, white and green. Saris and the Pros Closet have 2 riders in the mix, and this is this meandering right-hander that leads us nicely into the sprint. Remember, it's a little bit of a kick up to the line. One of the most dominant riders so far in these sprints is moving up. She's such well, it's Adegeist, watch out for her again. Can she make it 3 podiums from 3? She's in that Ionian kit. She's moving up to the front already there. Hansen is on the front at the moment. A few featherweight power-ups been used. It is a slight downhill before the road kicks up. Frisch now leads. So a good sprint here by team at Swedish Swifters. This is Hermansson on at the front now, has opened up a bit of a gap, 9 watts a kilo, but she's gone very, very long indeed. Frisch not too far behind for the Ionian Racing team. Cecilia Lejeune is there as well, but Cecilia Hansen's going to be overhauled on the line, I think, by Spadstrom. So we'll get confirmation of that. It looked as if it was Spadstrom. We'll get confirmation. And that was a wonderful sprint, and it's really fractured things at the front. She was up there in the opening sprint of the night, scoring highly again from the team. She's there in second behind her. Then you have Keller, Embring, Adegeist, top 5 performance after first and second previously. Hag, Paulus, Dubak, and Clutterbuck. First home. The sprint is done and dusted. How that's affected the points out on the left. But it's deep breath time now of
yeah, I'm just seeing Svardstrom with those 10 points, and again Team Swedish Swifters picking up a good amount of points to move them up, and we'll get the overall tally very soon once the Swift HQ have tallied them up. Hansen as well from High Note, but this front group now, as here we are, here is the overall results. Team Swedish Swifters, this is one of the best performances I have ever seen from the team. 54 points so far of those 3 intermediate sprints. 33 for Heino Race Team. Ionian Race Team, thanks to Adegeist with the 25, Movistar E-Team with the 15, Beast Mode powered by Rose with the 13, I Race Like a Girl with 9, Ensured powered by Pedal Power with 8, and 2024 there, thanks to Paulus in that last sprint with the 8 points as well. So they're tied with Ensured, and you just see a few power-ups being dropped now. A moment after that final sprint for the riders, just to recover an array of different power-ups. We have a draft, aero, and a lightweight.
Well, sorry to leave you hanging there. I'm back in the fold. Anna, thank you for holding the fort. But as you say, there's a lot of these power-ups aren't just used. You mentioned it, detailed it very well there, Hannah, that sometimes these power-ups aren't just used for tactical purposes in terms of getting away, winning sprints. It's to give you that little bit of recovery, because this has been a really, really difficult race. We have a drastically reduced, especially after that last sprint. Let's have a look how many riders that we have that are surviving. Well, 33 riders. The last rider in this group is Cécile Lejeune. She's just sat at the back there for Canyon Esports. She's got 1 teammate company. Let's have a look at that sprint again, Hannah. It really was a good one, which has left Team Swifters, well, with 54 points ahead of 33 behind now. Just talk us through this sprint. Unsurprisingly, lots of power-ups been dropped here.
Lots of power-ups, all the right ones as well for this sprint, and it was Adegeist just going through the middle there again, following that white line, and Curry in the second. I think this is from the second intermediate sprint here, but we saw Adegeist take the maximum points with a rider from Team Swedish Swifters getting on the podium as well. So just shows Adegeist didn't get into the podium positions in the third intermediate sprint, but a powerful result there from Team Swedish Swifters. Hansen at the back from Heino. The Swedish rider really making the most of the draft there. Much recovery, Matt.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Well, like I said, this is a relatively small group, as we said, Hannah. You rightly pointed out. That basically will be moving at that speed on a relatively flat bit of road. You'll be spending the least amount of energy to move at speed. Cecilia Hansen from Sweden, one of the most experienced and one of the strongest riders out there. She knows how to ride this race, and also it's relatively easy to move up from a group this small. It's different when there's riders. It's always a little bit of a gamble sitting right at the back. Although you might be saving energy, there's the risk that you might miss it or caught out from riders kind of dropping the wheel in front. But Hansen here, although she's dropped off a little bit further back, she's essentially, the best way to describe this is real, just surfing the wheels and kind of using that draft to make sure she's as refreshed, as recuperated and as she can be for what's going to be an absolutely brutal assault to the line. And we saw in the men's race, this finale, the climb hard enough, we got the lead in, but the climb itself, it isn't just a straight run into the line, it's a climb, then a drop and a kick up for the last 100 meters. It must be really complex to try and deliver the power at the right time.
Definitely. When I was watching the men's race, you see the red numbers flying up in the top right hand screen showing the percentage of the ascent. It really is terrifying to watch, and you can only imagine how much pain, how much hurt, how much light is already in those legs by the time you get to that point of the course. And it really is about picking your moment to attack or where you want to be as well. Position yourself, go into the climb not too far back, because it'll be so difficult to move up, as opposed to when you're on the flat. It's much better for you to be at the back. It's about sort of switching your allegiance to the front of the bunch, maybe sitting in the top 5, 6, 7 positions, as opposed to at the back where Hansen is. So I'm sure soon, as we near the finish, that we'll see the rider from Sweden, who was third at the World Championships Esports back in December. Well, I'm sure we will see her start moving up through the bunch.
Yep, she's very, very experienced indeed. And as I say, it's a relatively small and compact group. Just looking at the figure of Kristin Kulczynski here, just drifting through. I do like that new kit of 2024. She's got a teammate with her in this front group as well, in the form of Shayna Paulus, another very, very good finisher indeed. There's the stats of Kulczynski, just rolling that big gear. She's so strong up one of these little preliminary drags, I like to call it. It won't be long before they actually head on to the glass sky road. And she's making it hard early on here. 5.7 Ks to go. She's putting out 7 watts a kilo. Again, she's really putting the hurt on the other riders. And she's going to want to make this last few Ks as hard as she can for as many riders, and really try and thin this group out now, because she's riding in an unrelenting way and actually maybe just drifting clear of this group.
Well, even from that effort that she's just made, she's already put riders into the hurt locker, putting them at 1 second behind her. So it just shows that a bit of an injection of pace can really start to fragment this bunch. And Kulczynski, as you say, she'd want to take as few riders as possible to the finish line, try and make it as difficult as possible. That really suits her riding style, her forte.
She continues to ride out of the saddle. Of course, the road does start to kick up here. You can see on the top right of your screen there, that's the percentage gradient that we're on at the moment. And this is really just a little bit, well, the riders are very well warmed up. They've got 31.7 kilometres under their virtual wheels at the moment. And it is Team Heino now moving to the front. Cecilia Hansen take things up in front of maybe just add a little bit more pace. Remember, all 5 riders in Heino are in there as well. We've got numerous riders from the team. Blue shorts and the white.
And you can see the 3 Heino riders. It's almost like they're riding a lead out. You can just see the red jerseys with the H on their back. You can just see a rider as well, just disrupting that lead out from Saris in the yellow. And we start to see our first power up being used on this climb, with 5 kilometers remaining. Just in the center of the bunch, we see a draft power up being used. We're not seeing any attacks coming through yet. Everyone just being very patient on this climb, as the gradient ever so slightly, starts to ramp up to 3%. So we've been consistently down at 1-2%, shallow in the middle of the bunch from Beast Mode, powered by Rose, the old German squad, which is up by Sebastian Wolf.
Yeah, shallow.
Head down.
Yeah, shallow. As you can see, on the drops there, as you said, Hannah. I mean, just rocking her shoulders side to side gives you an insight into the sort of effort. Well, the figures there just tell a story, don't they? 4.7 watts a key. This group continues to thin out. Riders now dropping off the back, thinning out even further. There's a little bit of respite here, but the last thing you want to do now is lose the wheel. And Shallow has managed to make sure that she remains in contact back towards the front. That's Stevenson from Cryo RDT. Armitage is there. Fretta, Lizzie Duncombe, Clutterbuck now riding, of course, for Movistar. She's not too far away as well. Just going underneath this arch, this will be where the road starts to kick up again. Still around 6-7 minutes, well, about 7 minutes of effort on this race. We've got one more small descent after this drag, and then that horrible 1,300 metre rise to the line, which includes that nasty dip before the line. And I would go so far as to say this is not just one of the hardest finishes, but one of the most complex and difficult finishes that we see in Zwift racing. This is a great circuit, but a ridiculously hard, complex finale to get right.
Definitely, and I think it's also a very deceiving climb as well, because when you look at it on this glass surface that the riders are going through, which in the virtual world looks fantastic, but it's very deceiving as to how steep it is. It really saps the energy out of the legs, and as I said before, the legs will be burning already, the lungs will be burning, the lactate will be building up in the legs, and this is where you really need to start to keep that concentration levels as well. Make sure there's going to be no splits within that bunch. Don't find yourself on the wrong side from the injection of paste. And Duncombe just sitting very nicely around 5th position.
Yeah, a good bit of riding there by Liz out the saddle on the climb. Now she sits back down in the seats, just a small descent, 3.3 kilometres to go. This is the NYC, the New York City KOM after party points race. Of season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. It's been a very attritional race so far. 30 points out on the road from there, out of the dusted. The team that lead coming into the final climb of the day, the final of the day, the team Swedish Zwifters, they have 54 points. They've ridden, well, the best I've ever seen them ride out on the road in terms of collecting points, without a shadow of a doubt. Not too far behind the team behind them, 33. So this is going to be absolutely crucial now. 50 points for the first rider across the line. 40, 35, 30, 27, 25, 24.
Despite Anna Svardstrom's efforts early on in those three intermediate sprints, she's only just been tailed off. So she's the last rider that has been tailed off. The pace currently being set by Natalie Stevenson from Cryo RDT, Louise Huback sitting tight on her wheel, Mona Lee Keller as well from Ensured, powered by Pedal Power. And each of these riders, despite being on this section, you can just see Barbara Friesch and the effort out the saddle for the Ionian race team. Curry in the centre of the bunch, a rider who has won 2 individual rounds of season 2 of the ZRL. And you can almost to cut the tension with a knife. All the riders very patient, biding their time before they want to start to make their moves. Who's going to go first? Who's going to open up? Who's going to want to attack? Is any team going to try and attack and then counterattack? Catherine Curry, the former USA professional road race champion, out the saddle there in the picture-in-picture. And you can just see how low her heart rate is, only 143 beats per minute. Keeping a very nice pace there. Plenty of ride-ons as well. So for the last 1.6 kilometers, head over to your Zwift companion apps, give the ride-on, and the bunch now being led by Huback as we ramp things up to 9-10%, Matt.
Indeed, we're just heading on to the final climb to the line. This is forward KOM. Catherine Curry heads to the front. Such a powerful campaigner, sticking out a lot of watts here. Frisch also not too far away, Lethbridge not too far away, but Catherine Curry of I Race Like a Girl sticking out a quite remarkable 8.4 watts a kilo. Her heart rate slowly rising as well. It's a slow speed because it's a climb, but she's absolutely romping the climb. Going to go on to the Flash very, very shortly. This is a magnificent performance. She's got nearly 4 seconds over Frisch and Nelson, and the rest of the field spread over a long way now. What a ride by the American here, Hannah.
This is incredible time in this one. Very right, 965 metres to go, and Catherine Curry really was sitting patiently in that bunch. And as I said before, she had a very low heart rate waiting to pounce, and she still is maintaining that gap over Caroline Williams from Hino. 3.4 seconds is the gap. And it looks like Louise Huback is wanting to try and bridge across to this. You can start to see those orange numbers flashing up on the right-hand side of your screen. Huback is just overtaken her teammate Williams. And Catherine Curry really holding on to this one well. We see 8% is the gradient.
Very steep. We've just gone past the steepest part of the climb. There's another little flat section here. Huback in pursuit of Curry. Williams just behind her. Then we have Keller. Daniela Kuczynski not too far behind. Lethbridge, Nelson. That is 10 in the 11 of this race. It looks like Huback is overhauled by brave Catherine Curry. She's sit on her wheel. Another rider coming up. Power is Monali Keller. Daniela Estrate isn't too far away as well, but Huback finally gets on to the wheel of Catherine Curry as the gradient just starts to ease mercifully, but it's going to... What? Huback from Norway. At the moment, it's Norway, America, Canada. Oh, this is going to be a thriller of a finale, Hannah.
Well, she just got onto the wheel of Huback with 420 metres to go. Curry, she overtakes Huback. She doesn't stay in the slipstream. Curry left in the tank. She lets Huback go in front of her, and Curry really looking like she's ready to pounce now. 300 metres to go. This is going to be tight on the line. It's Denmark versus USA.
And Huback now surges clear. The rider from Hanau is absolutely romping up this New York course. And look at that. She's got a featherweight power up just at the right time. But it's coming by her. It looks like it's Catherine Curry. No, Williams. Williams is coming back up. Well, this is absolutely sensational. Curry now is coming back. It looks like the rider from I Race Like a Girl is going to overhaul it. Where did she come from? What a ride by Catherine Curry to take the win. That was absolutely sensational. She pulled that out of the hat to take yet another win. That was something very, very special indeed.
Incredible how she was able to get onto the wheel of Huback there, bide her time, and then open up when it really mattered into the finish line, and to win by that margin as well, 2.1 seconds. Catherine Curry taking her third individual victory in the ZRL throughout the last 2 seasons. Incredible.
Well, she has been one of the most dominant riders recently. Look at that. The former American road champion timed that to perfection. Well, it looked like she'd got it all wrong. I mean, it's all wrong. It was still going to be a superb ride. She got caught by Huback, and then it looked like Huback had it in the bag. But Catherine Curry, she dug deep into her suitcase of salvation and pulled that win from somewhere. That was very, very special indeed. We've seen some special rides by Catherine Curry, and that ranks up there. What ride by the rider from I Race Like a Girl. So experienced, but that experience matched with real power as well.
Raw power, and to go so early on that climb as well, and to hold them off for so long, and to the point where it started to plateau as we went over the top there with around 300 metres to go, and just to find that little bit left in the tank to get onto the wheel of Huback was incredible. Just to bide the time, patience really was key there.
It really was a very, very emotional race indeed. Again, we've got our abacus working to try and calculate what will be the overall score. All those points out on the road. Heading into the final, it was the Swedish Zwifters who had the most amount of points. They did manage to get a rider well, there's confirmation of the individual results scored. 50 points go to Catherine Curry. Then we have the duo of Hino riders. They've got it so well. Huback, Williams, then Cecile Lejeune, the first rider home from Canyon Esports. Then Daniela Estrate, the Romanian there riding for the Ionian Racing Team. Then we had Monali Keller riding for Insured, powered by Pedal Power. Then another rider from Hainaut in the form of Cecilia Hansen. The first rider home from Movistar, Steph Klotterbuck. Lethbridge there in 9th from Hainaut. And the first home for Kristen Kulczynski. Let's have a look. Page 2. That was led by the rider that dominated the early proceedings. A good ride by the rider from Ionian, Looshead Adigist for 11th. Then we have Bjarhead in 12th, Nelson 13th, 14th, Alisa Hag, the first of the newly promoted squads. Nelly Larson there in 15th, Megan Armitage for Cryo RDT in 16th. Then we have Duncombe, Freighter, Sidlick and Barbara Frisch rounding out the top 20 at 25 seconds. Well, the field split asunder on the final ascent to the highest point in New York City. That was a magnificent race. We've got the team points coming up. Gnomes at Zwift HQ have been working tirelessly to get these points rattled off as quickly as possible. And look at that. Dominant yet again. It is a perpetual sea of red. Hainaut Racing Team dominant once more with 161 points. But what a ride by Team Swedish Zwifters there. Of amassing points, lots of points out on the road. Second on the night with 94. Ionian in third, one of their best performances. Then we have I Race Like a Girl, the squad of Catherine Curry, the individual winner. Solid performance by new squad Movistar. Then 2024 in sixth. Candy Sport there in the top 10 with seventh. Big Sarah at the Rose Closet, holding on to 31 points, rounding out the top 10. Well, I think it's time to bring on that man, Rassan, for a cheeky little bit of Rassan. Amazing race, a superb individual performance by Catherine Curry. How on earth she pulled that out of the bag, I'll never know. But what for you, my man, were the main talking points? What was your takeaway? What was Rassan's replay?
I have to tell you, man, the women's race was much more exciting than the men's race. I did not off in this race whatsoever, but I would say the first sprint, just like in the men's race, so it's kind of predictable, right? Everyone's got a lot of energy. There's a lot of anxiety going on. I feel like that sprint also was a little tougher than the other sprints because you do have this run-in downhill 3-4%, and then it kicks up to about 4%, which kind of really hurts the legs a lot. But those sprints are just absolutely incredible. And like I said, the beginning of the race, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. And for some, it's all about the sprints, and perhaps they're not even thinking about the finish. You saw the first view there, and Adigist was absolutely amazing in the first sprint, but just timing was a little off, and she lost it. So again, we're going to come back to her a little later and show how strong she was today.
No, it really was superb. What about the performance? I mean, we've seen the team that won. No real surprise there. That's not to take anything away from Team Hamo. But what about the tactical performance of Team Swedish Zwifters? Dominated the sprints, and by courtesy of those points, I mean, they didn't have a rider in the top 10. I think their first rider home was 12th. Just shows, doesn't it, Rashan, how important, increasingly important, these points are out on the road.
Absolutely. I did pay attention to Team Sweden and their lead out for Sprint 2. It was absolutely nailed down perfectly. It looks like the first sprinter was actually going for the win, but what she was doing was actually just setting up her sprinter, kind of baiting the field to chase her down and use some of that power, and then their sprinter came through and took that win. Just like the sprint, though, false flat downhill, but it kicked up a little more. I think it was about 5 to 6% on that sprint. The only side I would say that was beneficial to that sprint was right after the sprint, you have a pretty nice downhill to allow the rest of the group to recover. So sprint 1 I thought was really difficult. Sprint 2 was a little easier, and everything, now you have to wait for the finish.
Well, let's have a little look at the finish because, we've had some spectacular finishes here, Rassan, but just take us through what was an absolutely scintillating last few hundred meters.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing that Curry took off so early. 1K to go. I mean, you look at with 500 meters to go, they still have just over a minute to complete it because the road is so steep. And for her to get caught and I almost she played a little possum, just to wait after she was caught and then to come back and lay a smackdown like that with the perfect timing of the power up. I mean, that's Zwift experience racing. That's also some patience and understand, situational awareness. She could have just buried herself, but she didn't. I think she played a little possum, let that rider catch her, and then boom, right across the top for the victory.
I think as well, and the ability to dig deep as well, because I don't think she'd have imagined to have got caught and then go again. So a wonderful performance. Rassan, it's been great to have you on board. There'll be more Rassan's replay next week, but until then, mate, it's good night, and thanks again. Love talking to you, mate.
See ya. Have a good one,
Rassan. Well, guys, so welcome back, Dave. A breathless race for the women's there. And Hannah, let's firstly go to you. I mean, what are your takeaways from tonight? I mean, we saw some real vintage Zwift racing, and that, again, we tend to say it week after week. That was one of the best women's finales that I have ever seen.
That was certainly up there with one of the best, and not just the finales, actually as a whole, to see Team Swedish Swifters up there really dominating those intermediate sprints, and then Ionian, I think that's one of their standout performances that we've seen in any of the ZRL seasons. Really, really impressive stuff. And then for Catherine Curie to make that early attack, get caught, hold back and be patient, and go again. You look at the red numbers in the top right of the screen and how steep the finale was, 13, 14, 15% with 150 meters to go. Then to drop Huback, really unbelievable, fantastic stuff, an exciting finale.
It was a brilliant race to watch. And just by the way, in terms of the overall league standings, please head over to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League. You can look at all the races to look back on the races that we've already had as well. So for all results, head over to that website. But let's bring Dave back in again. Dave, a great night's racing. One of the most challenging courses physically and mentally to get right. I was saying to Hannah in the 3/4 of the way through the women's race, that finale, to judge your effort to perfection, so difficult. You need to be a rider of real experience to get it right, don't you?
Absolutely. I was looking or listening to what Rassan was saying, and if you watch how Catherine Curie uses her power-up, the feather, you couldn't have played that any better than she did. I mean, the timing was within 1/10 of a second, using it to its maximum benefit. It was as savvy of a ride as we have seen. She now moves into that elite group. There's 2 riders that have won 3 times in the ZRL, Catherine Curie and Freddie Ovid.
There we go. Well, guys, thanks very much for joining me again. It's been a wonderful week. Please make sure that you join us next week. We're back at the same time on Tuesday, the 27th of April, and it will be round 4 of season 3. And we're back in London on the Greatest London Flat for a second team time trial of season 3. So please do not miss that one. And there's lots more Zwift racing for you to enjoy as well, in partnership once more with the WTRN. Please head over to Zwift Community Live. Nathan Guerra and his team will take you through the community races just to get a sense of the riders that you might see in the Premier Divisions in the future. Also, make sure you head over to YouTube to watch World of Zwift, hosted, of course, by OJ Borg, with guest appearances now and again by myself, Dave, and Hannah. But until then, until next week, stay safe and ride on, and I'll leave you with the best bits of tonight.